Give me one sec, ladies and gentlemen. The show should be starting.
Let me mute up to you.
Yeah, I beg all of them and the mute of the mic still. So I introduce this thing. All right, then looks like we're live still. Looks like we're live. All right, respect, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your patience. The show is starting now. In the building. Mad thing. A bag of chat messages just popped up. You get me? In the building, we got Shaka and we got Issa, the black Tellect. You get me, sir? How this one go? You see the title of the thing is Pan-Africanism outdated. Issa's affirming that it is, and Shaka is obviously negating that. He's like, no, that's not the case. So how the structure is going to go is that we're first going to have an affirmative speech from Issa presenting his case of why he thinks it is. That's going to go on for anywhere up to 15 minutes. And then we're going to have Shaka straight after that. He's going to make his presentation on why he believes it's not. That's going to go out for 15 minutes. And then we're going to have a negative cross-examination. So Issa's going to question Shaka. I hope I got that in the right order.
No, I'm going to question him first.
Shaka is going to question Issa, my bad, to pick holes in his thing. And then vice versa. Issa's going to question Shaka. We're going to go back and forth. And that's going to be like a 3-minute session each way. You get me? So I hope everybody understands how the format's going to run. If you don't, you'll just see. Just watch and see. You get me? But I hope I explained it good. So yeah, if the man them should be ready to go, we're gonna get it going still. Everybody in the comment section, I beg you keep it respectable. Make comments that's relevant to the information that you're watching. Help out, throw in your pointers and all of that. You get me? Keep it subject based and allow the personal insults. I beg you. But yeah, human psychology and behavior, sir. Act as you will, you get me? But yeah, we're ready to go, man, sir. If you want to rally up.
Okay. Sorry. Yes. Peace and love to my brother here, Shaka, and Content for hosting this, and to the watchers, listeners, people in the chat. And yeah, alhamdulillah, my brother Shaka has again come forth to the challenge, rose as a warrior, as somebody confident in his position and stance. This subject has been something waiting for a good while, and obviously, it's something that must be done and spoken about. This subject matter and this type of debate is one in a sequence, it would seem, of quite a few, so maybe up to 5 more debates. So I suggest, even with the outcome of this, don't make too much of a conclusion or a set of conclusions in regards what you position to hold or whatever else. This is just a sequence, one in a series of debates of this type. So yes, my perspective in general, of which I'm debating or representing in this debate, is Pan-Africanism outdated? And the angle which I'm coming from is that Pan-Africanism, as we know it to be in regards to the basic definition, and I'll just give one Wikipedia thing, which is Pan-Africanism is a worldwide movement that aims to encourage and strengthen bonds of solidarity between all indigenous and diasporan ethnic groups of African descent. So I would suggest that was a nice thing back, let's say, Marcus Garvey time, let's say Nobunaga Ali and Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X time, where specifically the predominant culture would have been, let's say, at least in America and the Caribbean and even England, Christianity. That would be for the black people there, as well as the rulers. So the nation, even the general white people, despite being a racist, there were certain expectations of them, even amongst themselves, in regards to the morals, the principles, etc., the values. So when dealing with the type of people that we're dealing with amongst ourselves, they were predominantly Christian. So because I'm suggesting that that has changed, our people may, even those that may label themselves Christian, they're not really falling into those categories too much in regards to how much faith they have. They've been swept away into this modernist type mentality. Our women have become more, convinced by the feministic arguments. so much so to the detriment of the family. The men have been swayed away by a lot of anti-black gangsterism, and all the different ways in which we now are supposed to look at our pro-black agenda has changed so much from this when this Pan-African idea seemed to have come about. So the first point I'm going to make, or first step, is in regards to the identity of being an African. Now, this identity, if you look at it really, is similar to the N-word in the sense that the European came to our land, that's our holy land, our continent, decided where the boundaries and borders would be of which they called Africa. So they limited it, let's say, for those who say that Arabia, Israel, all of that is also part of Africa. The European decided it wasn't. The European could have cut it off and said, well, Africa is what is now called sub-Saharan Africa, which would mean Egypt, Libya, and these various other countries of North Africa would have not been part of Africa. And I'm suggesting we're buying into their term, their label, their ideas, their concepts of what is Africa. And therefore, when you take on the identity from that label, you now have labeled yourself based upon their label of your land, which would mean you have subjected your mindset and your identity of who you are based upon what they've seen you and your land to be. Now, our land, they would see it as something which is full of resources for them to willingly and easily come and thief. And we're supposed to be inferior people who didn't know what we should do with gold and the oil and the various minerals and so on, that's their diamonds, etc. According to them, we were just savages. We didn't know what to do with it. So from that perspective, I say the first problem we encounter is this identity problem. Secondly to that, we now have an issue where so many people we have various groups that are disagreeing with, who are disagreeing with the very identity of being an African, meaning that they didn't even come from the continent. They're saying they're indigenous to the Americas, they're indigenous to the Caribbean. And this seems to be another argument which is being put forth, which seems to not side with the Pan-African idea. And it may have just as much a legitimate argument as any other argument that's being presented and put forth.
Is it just me? I can't hear nothing.
Yo, sir, Isa, are you there? Can't hear you, no, brother. Technical difficulties, ladies and gentlemen. We're gonna try send him a message in the background. Let me pause this time still.
Yeah, but she's up his time.
Yeah. We got 10 minutes left still. We got 10 minutes left still. I'm gonna try to get a timer up on the screen right now. I'm downloading one still, sir. Yeah. I'm gonna try to reach out to him in the back still. Bear with me for the moment, please, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, you know. Shout out to everyone talking about Sheikh Shakara, you don't know. Yeah, big up. Yeah, we prefer Obibini. Obibini is a title in Yoruba. You know what I'm saying? But I'm not even sure I'm worthy of Obibini yet. You know what I mean? But we'll get there. But yeah, man. Has a similar meaning still. except for the fact that Obibini relates directly to learning and knowledge. You know what I mean? But yeah, big up everyone. If you're here and you're not a subscriber, share up the subscription. Big up to Melanated.
Cyber kids, as I call them, or cyber brain kids that are growing up. It seems
Right, Issa's back. Oh, we thought he was back. Man's been talking for the last.
apps think we're not going to get do cyberhead children.
He dropped out again. All right, so we are work on it now. M.A. Brown, the Prince needs to come drumming one day. I agree, my bro. I agree. He's a good little drummer still. He's getting there. You know what I mean?
Look, could you not hear me?
No. Dude, the last thing I heard, yeah, was he was on the identity point. I remember the last sentence he spoke.
Okay, so you heard something then. Okay, so it was not responding.
We was on the identity point. All right. He was on the identity point, and then what was he saying?
Hold on.
Leo, can you remember the last point that he made that we heard? Yeah. It was on
Okay, I can repeat that. At least you heard something. That's the main thing. I thought I was just talking to myself.
Yeah. So yeah, so we got a lot of it, but so you had basically you at the point at which you cut out, you had 10 minutes left. So we heard 5 minutes, and you were talking about identity, and you got to the point where you were talking about the continent and the boundaries, and that's the first point, like basically boundaries being designated by Europeans. This is the last point we heard. You started to talk about the fact that there are other black people that are discarding the term African, and they're talking about how they're Aboriginal or something like that. Yeah, I think that's what yeah. So continue from there.
Oh, okay. So did you hear the whole of the identity of what an African is and why it's equal to the N-word?
Yeah. So you said it's equal to the N-word because something to do with they drew the boundaries of the continent. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right. Going on to people that are saying that they're not African. That's where we cut off.
Okay. All right. Let me just use the phone until, you know. Yeah, I was.
Yeah, that's the better thing still.
I was talking to myself, bro. All right, big up.
All right, so you got just under 10 minutes left still. Let me know when you're ready to start. Start by the timer.
Yeah. Let me start now.
Yeah.
Boy,
all right, cool.
Yeah. Big up.
Rolling.
Okay, so comments said baby making more sense.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Hey, this one, baby making more sense than shit. So big up. It's funny. Yeah. So as I was saying, in relation to identity again, we didn't seem to have as many people that had these conflicting ideas. So we can bring in the Hebrew Israelites or amongst them, those that have a firm distaste for any what they call Hamite, and therefore that would be at least African identity. They're rejecting it outright. Then you have these others which are saying they're from the Americas or from the Caribbean, indigenous, and they're not African, right? So then we have the reality where we today, let's say of the age of Shaka and Leon and myself and so on, our parents might have been very, it may have been very easy to identify as African because it wasn't that far back that they could relate to the culture back in the Caribbean and even in the Americas, where you could very much see exactly how slavery had done its work and certain behaviors, and even women cutting their hair, using a cutlass and the rest of it. So much was still there, but we've changed so much since then. So going forward now, the generation coming up, those who are in the age of 16, 17 and 20s and whatever else, what identity are they going to be looking to? This seems to be more of a problem, causing more of a problem than it can solve. And this is the thing where, for me, identity is the first foundational step that we need to have rooted before we move forward in any objective. I think that was my last point with that. Let me see. Yeah, so in that, Pan-Africanism seems not to be able to address that problem, because the very identity, this was the main thing again. If you look at the nature of peoples, whether they be on the continent or elsewhere, the nature of human beings is generally to, especially when you've had a major catastrophe or you've moved somewhere, you will form an identity based upon where you move to work with where you are. So with us being here for so long, these children whose, let's say, grandparents were people that came over, but their parents were born here and they're born here. I think that I suggest the only way in which they're going to have a solid root of identity is for it to be somewhere rooted to the country that they're in. And even if we want to say, well, they want to move back to Africa, it should still be on the basis that they've got an identity rooted to where they are, rather than one floating in the air where they want to say they're an African, but yet what the hell is that? Because an African would have to be a Nigerian or Ghanaian or something else along with this term African. You're not just going to put yourself, in a place called Africa, which doesn't already have a government, doesn't already have a culture and a set of languages and tribal customs and whatever else. And even those people may not want you there or want to mix with you, etc. So we've got all of these problems right now that I can see that seem not to have been there before. So in relation to that, I feel that Pan-Africanism is outdated in the sense that these bonds of solidarity between all indigenous and diaspora and ethnic groups of African descent is actually becoming, these bonds are becoming, or the potential of these bonds are becoming more distant rather than bonding. We're becoming more distant, and I think it can't deal with it. So I suggest we need to work with something else. One of the examples of the failures of Pan-Africanism is obviously I'm a specialist in this subject, is the hoodwink that the ridiculously wicked and barbaric and savage religion of Sunniism has pulled upon the Pan-African mind and the Pan-African eyes. Clearly, the Pan-African didn't see the potential danger and harm of the Sunni pagan anti-Black religion or ideology. This imperialist terrorist ideology keeps rearing its head here and there. We find Boko Haram over there. We find the Mali Caliphate. We find so many things that this thing is causing a problem. I suggest people see normal Sunniism as HIV, and you see ISIS and the Salafi movement as the full-blown AIDS, because you'll only get this in your head when you start to see that no matter, as long as there's this Sunni thing hanging around, the fundamental part of the Sunni ideology is conquest and imperialism, suppression of other peoples. Very simple and very basic. To be a Sunni, you have to hold Abu Bakr, the first Sunni usurper, Umar, the second one, and Uthman, the third, and Aisha, who's mentioned as an enemy in the Quran. To be a Sunni, you have to accept these first three as being rightly guided caliphs and examples for all of the Muslims. So forget what the Prophet did. These are the people that they take their understanding and example of the religion from. So this is the real Sunniism. What we have found is that the Sunnis that we're facing, whether it be Speaker's Corner, whether it be in the mosque, sometimes maybe even your family, they lie to you. We have an example of Ziryab. We have an example of Scattered Minds. We have an example of Sunni Isa, right? And I'm not trying to, throw shade or throw anything negative against them in that sense, but we have working modern day examples with people that we know from the Hangouts. Now check it. It's as simple as this. If we are trying to find out what people are inquiring, what my position is, what my ideology and what my religion is, and they're trying to find out what Isa thinks and believes, what Ziryab thinks and believes, and what Scattered Mind thinks and believes. If poor Scattered Minds is not fully sure about what Sunniism is about, then he should make it clear, you know what, I don't really know much about it. This is what I hold on to, and done. And then you come to Isa. Isa says he's a Salafi, but then he's actually a Dhahri, which is a sect of Sunniism, which the real Salafis totally reject as being Salafi, which he doesn't seem to want to explain to the people. Then you got Ziryab, which saying he's not a Sunni, and he wants to delay telling you his basic beliefs about the companions of the Prophet, which would therefore make him a Sunni. When we finally get it out of him, he fits right into the box of Sunni. So even though he may be a different Sunni, he's still a Sunni. So these problems are what we're having in our community, where we need to speed up the understanding that we have. We need to speed up the understanding that we have of the various groups. You go to the Hebrew Israelites, they tell you, we believe this. You lot are cursed, or your enemies, or whatever. They tell you straight. There's no takia with the Hebrew Israelites. We know we stand with them. You go to the Moors, again, they tell you the truth. You come to people like me, we tell you the truth. This is where we stand. The only group that likes to, cover over what they have is this simple, basic terrorist ideology that we must see for what it really is. And I'll stop there so that we can hopefully go further into this particular thing of regards to Pan-Africanism, a outdated ideology and principle. I'll stop there for now. Thank you.
All right then. Man had 1 minute and 45 seconds left still. Shaka, let me know you're ready to go. Some commentary that was hilarious, that last part. And I weren't keeping up with the comments still, but I bet people are saying I knew it. But yeah. All right, yeah, side point. What you saying, Shaka? You ready to go? Your time. Shaka, you there?
Yeah, man's ready. Yeah, just I'm gonna share my screen. All on little piece.
Well, I'll just say while you're doing that, I'm gonna try and log back in with the computer, or shall I stay on? Shall I stay on here?
Up to you, bro.
I would suggest you stay on your phone, fam, car. Yeah, I didn't like
All
I
right.
chopped out a while ago, man. Sounds good on the phone as well.
All right, bless. I'll stay on.
I mean, I said no. Right, shut that down. Shut that down. So let me share out my screen first. Share screen. I might as well share the whole of the screen. All right, hold on. The wrong thing, that. Right, can you see my screen, yeah?
Yes, it's showing right now. Is that good? That's good, yeah, that's good, man.
Can the people them see my screen as well, yeah?
People don't should be able to see your screen. Got a one in there if you can see your screen, then people. Give me 1 second. Let me just look on my phone.
Yeah, we can see it. Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah.
All right.
Let me know when you're ready so I can press start on the timer.
One sec. I just want to make sure this thing's functioning proper. All right, cool. Hold on. I want to make sure this thing's functioning proper. Okay, family. All right, let's go. So,
all right.
when
time
it comes
started.
Oh yeah, you ready?
Yeah. Time started.
All right. So when it
give me your mic, Isa.
It's muted, brother. It's muted.
All right. So when it comes down to it now, yeah, the first thing that we have to do when discussing an issue like this is define the thing that we're talking about. Yeah. So first of all, Tendam Wadi, be thankful unto the Most High, our Father, Creator of the universe. Kudzai Muzim Makudo. Give praises unto our great ancestors, African power for all African people. I've got a lot of things to run through in a very short space of time, so forgive me. Stay tuned. Get your paper and pen. We're going to take some notes and go into the thing, all right? So first and foremost, Pan-Africanism. What is it? Yeah, in its basic definition, Pan-Africanism simply means all African, yeah, or all black people. Pan means all, as it's defined in the dictionary, all inclusive, especially in relation to a whole continent, racial group, or religion. And African, as an identity, is a connection.
So let me just, sorry, 1 sec. Sorry, brother. If you need more time, take more time. So you don't have to go as fast. So you can have more time if you want. Yeah.
I appreciate that. I will try to stick within the 15 minutes for the sake of the conversation and the audience as well. Yeah.
So, I'm just saying Africa's so fast though. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so man hear that. Give thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah. So African, as an identity, is basically connecting us to a heritage, a land, a history, and a culture. And this is something that I get from Baba John Henrik Clarke, our great historian, because he was challenging us in terms of the fact that the term black is insufficient as an identity, because identity should, and the label that you use should connect you to land, history, heritage, and culture. Yeah. However, just going into this, there is proto-Pan-Africanism, which is Pan-Africanism before Pan-Africanism, which inspired the development of Pan-Africanism, which I may go into later. We'll see if that comes into play, yeah? But what's necessary to note here is that Henry Sylvester Williams and others, yeah, including a brother by the name of Samuel Coleridge Taylor, who has significance in terms of our UK Black heritage, started this thing called the Pan-African Society. And what they were primarily concerned with, yeah, in the late 19th century was the colonization of Africa. Berlin Conference 1884, 1885, during which the European nations have basically consolidated their carve-up of the African continent, yeah, resulting in the majority of the borders that we currently see on the African continent today. And so from its outset, Pan-Africanism was concerned with organizing Black people around the world for the decolonization of the African continent in order to challenge the power, the presupposed power of these Europeans who were assuming domination of the continent at that time. So we define colonization or colonialism as the policy or practice of acquiring full or partial political control over another country, occupying it with settlers and exploiting it economically. Yes, I'm going to add to that. That's a dictionary definition. I'm going to add to that politically, economically, and culturally. Okay. Right. Sorry, that's a repeat slide there. Forgive me. So we're going to define Pan-Africanism even further now. Yeah. And just go into some definitions that we find around the place. I believe that Issa gave this one already, and it comes from Wikipedia. Sorry, the online dictionary. Sorry, the principle or advocacy of the political union of all the indigenous inhabitants of Africa. Note the term indigenous inhabitants, yeah, and that would also regard the descendants of the indigenous inhabitants, yeah. Wikipedia goes further. Pan-Africanism is a worldwide movement that aims to encourage and strengthen bonds of solidarity between people of African descent based upon common fate, going back to the Atlantic slave trade. The movement extends beyond the continental Africans, with substantial support base among the African diaspora in the Caribbean, Latin America, and the United States. There are some things that need to be corrected about this definition, but maybe if we've got time later on, we'll go into that. Yeah, for now, we'll move on. It is based on the belief that unity is vital to economic, social, and political process, and the aims to unify and uplift people of African descent. The ideology asserts that the fate of all African peoples and countries is intertwined. At its core, Pan-Africanism is the belief that African peoples, both on the continent and in the diaspora, share not merely common history, but common destiny, right? So, more definitions now. This is a definition that's put forward by Baba Kwame Ture, our great ancestor, who believes in the ideology of scientific socialism. So he tied Pan-Africanism to scientific socialism, yeah? And he says Pan-Africanism is the total liberation and unification of Africa and all African people under scientific socialism. I'm not going to go deeply into scientific socialism, except to say that what he's referring to is the rulership of the African masses, more specifically identified as the working class and peasantry, yes? As those who are under whose custodianship a nation is developed and ruled, yeah? Then there is an attempted non-ideological definition. So Pan-Africanism as a concept, again, all African people and within it, there are different schools of thought. Scientific socialism is one, yeah? This definition put forward by a brother by the name of Kofi Klue, who's an activist in an organization called the Pan-African Reparations Coalition of Europe, says Pan-Africanism is an anti-imperialist decolonizational movement, rallying together a broad array of African-loving forces that are interested in link networking globally, which means globally and locally, in pursuit of various configurations of an independent worldwide political, ideological, cultural, and organization framework of struggle for the total liberation, unification, and self-determined progression of Africans and our kith and kin, yeah? So he's attempted to remove aspects of it like scientific socialism because not all Pan-Africanists believe in scientific socialism. And I'm saying this to say that Pan-Africanism is fluid and dynamic, yeah? It is evolving, all right? In that respect, and therefore has different schools of thought. Bit of a definition, just in case anybody might not be aware. Imperialism is a policy of extending a country's power and influence through colonization, use of military force, and other means. Then now, we have the issue of neo-colonialism, which as defined by the Osagyefo, Kwame, and Nkrumah, is defined as the essence of neo-colonialism is that the state which is subject to it is in theory independent and has all the outward trappings of international sovereignty. In reality, its economic system and thus its political policy is directed from outside. So I say all that to say, yeah, the question that we have to ask then, if Pan-Africanism as an ideology was formulated to challenge colonialism, yes, and I say formally, to challenge colonialism, yes, then evolved to challenge neo-colonialism, and we look at what colonialism, imperialism, and neo-colonialism is, are these problems and issues no longer problems for Africa and African people? Because that is the only context in which Pan-Africanism can be outdated, if the problems that it is designed to solve no longer exist. Yes, that's point number one. Point number two is, are the strategies proposed by Pan-Africanists to solve these problems no longer relevant to our present day reality? Yeah, so I'm now going to go develop. How long I got left? Content based upon the road, 15 minutes.
Pardon me, fam. You got 7 minutes left.
All right, cool. Yeah. So now I'm going to go forward and explain the relevance of Pan-Africanism in present day based upon the definition of nationalist Pan-Africanism or Black nationalist Pan-Africanism or Pan-Africanist nationalism. Yeah, these are different ways of saying the same thing. Pan-Africanism, as defined by Black nationalist Pan-Africanists, is the total liberation and reunification of Africa and all African people, and the establishment of one continental and global African nationalist government. And Ma'atian, Ma'at is an ancient African concept developed in Kemet, which relates to principles of truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, balance, reciprocity, and order. So a Ma'atian or Ma'ati, world order. Yeah. Central themes of Pan-Africanism. All descendants of Africa are its only natural, Africa for Africa is at home and abroad. All descendants of Africa are its natural and rightful citizens, owners, and rulers, and must therefore affirm this legacy. Can that be an outdated concept? I don't know. Look to Africa, yeah, is another one. I'm going to move on for the sake of time. One God, one aim, one destiny. And this is relates to the kind of cultural and spiritual unity of African people as it relates to one destiny. But now we're going to go into the concept of nationalism. And now I want you to tell me if Pan-Africanism can be outdated in relation to the principles of nationhood, which it espouses. Yeah, if this ideology and these principles could aid us in solving some of the problems that we have today, yeah, in terms of pursuing these goals. Nationalism, African people building and maintaining autonomous nations and communities with institutions designed to promote, preserve, and protect African lives by any means necessary. Can this be an outdated goal, kings and queens? Is it ever an outdated aspiration for Black African people to develop nations that develop and preserve ourselves based upon our own agency? Can that ever be outdated? The idea of nationalism, one of the principles is race first, which is race awareness and cultural emancipation first, putting the survival and prosperity of our people and culture before all other considerations. This being the only logical and viable response to the worldwide racial oppression and genocide facing us as a people. So if we have been facing racial and cultural genocide, then we need an ideology that allows us to protect ourselves from further damage in relation to racial and cultural genocide. So if it is racial and cultural genocide no longer an issue for Black people, that would make the idea and the ideology of racial and cultural uplift and affirmation as it relates to Pan-Africanism no longer relevant. That is the question that we have to ask, yeah? Principles of nationalism, there are 7 essential principles, yeah? Proud heritage. We've been taught to be ashamed of our heritage. Pan-Africanism, and specifically Black nationalist Pan-Africanism, promotes us having a proud heritage. Can that be an outdated goal? Have we solved the problem of Africans being ashamed of our heritage? We have to ask that question. Self-governance. Are Africans governing ourselves currently at the moment, or are we still remaining under the shackles of neocolonialism? And if we are not governing ourselves at the moment, can the principles of Pan-Africanism as it relates to self-governance be outdated? Self-reliance. This relates to economic self-reliance. Yeah, depending upon our own resources, which are human and material, and institutions for the production and distribution of goods and services to fulfill our own needs and desires. Are Africans in control of our resources, whether they be human or material? Do Africans even have dominant control over our own genius and our intellect? Is African genius serving the interest of solving African problems in the world as we know it today? If not, then the principle of self-reliance as it relates to Pan-Africanism cannot be outdated. Separation, exclusiveness in philosophy, ideology, and organization, as opposed to integration and assimilation into the system, societies, philosophies, and institutions of others. This is one of them ones that separates the Pan-African world in the sense of the fact that not everybody has as much emphasis on this principle as the nationalist Pan-Africanists, but the essential point is that we need to separate from the system of our oppressors. Now, if in integration into the system of our oppressors further perpetuates our oppression, is it not necessary for an ideology to develop itself that encourages us to separate from the principles and ideologies of our oppressors? I'm going to move on. Self-defense. Should not need to explain this one. Are we under attack? If so, then we need to defend ourselves. So can the principle of self-defense as it relates to Pan-Africanism and Black nationalist Pan-Africanism be outdated if we are remaining under attack? Then there is land acquisition. Are African people in custodianship of African land that we call our own? Independence is based upon being able to command custodianship over areas of land. And if not, if Pan-Africanists are pushing forward the principle and programs in order to acquire land on behalf of African people under the custodianship of African people, can Pan-Africanism be outdated if we are yet to achieve this goal? Finally, repatriation, the process of returning all African people in mind, body, and spirit, not just body, ultimately to Mama Africa as our natural homeland. African people have been dispersed around the world and disconnected from our motherland. Africans who were dispersed and enslaved do not have quote unquote state representation on the continent at the moment as it stands. Yes, and so therefore, can the principle of Pan-Africanism in terms of repatriation be outdated when the return or the repair of African people in relation to our homeland has not been achieved? And I'm going to leave it right there for my initial opening comments.
Leon?
All right then. Yeah. Respect Shaka for that one there. That was a yeah, let me give me a personal opinion still, but yeah, all right, cool. We're gonna take the cross-examination. Oh my bad. Give me one sec. The clock's popping off in the background. We're gonna take the cross-examination from Eason out. That's gonna go. What you said? How long do we set for that? 3 minutes, right?
5. But it's me cross-examining him though.
Okay, my bad.
He spoke first.
Yeah.
Cross-examine him first.
My bad. All right, cool. Give me one sec. Let me just set the timer up. I want to try to put it on the screen as well so everyone can see. Cause you man can see the thing on YouTube as well, like.
What, the timer? Yeah.
Yeah, let me get it up on this one.
I can see the YouTube video, but I can't see a timer. Is there one on there?
Well, there's one of them now, but I saw it before when I was speaking.
Yeah. I'm gonna bring it on this screen still. Give me one sec. All right. To pull it to the side still. So it's a 5-minute thing, yeah?
Yeah.
Saying you man ready, yeah?
Yeah.
See the timer there to the left? When you see that timer go, I'm gonna mute my mic when you see that timer start. then
You ready, yeah? Leon, you ready? Okay, cool. What you mean the title on the screen though? Because I'm not. What? Yeah, okay. All right, cool. Yeah. So, Insa, my first question would be: you mentioned the thing about identity, and an identity tied to where we are. What would you suggest is an identity to unite African people then?
Because the whole point I was making was this whole concept of uniting African people. The first thing is, how would we be African when when a lot of us were taken? This term of being African didn't exist amongst ourselves. So already that is a fantasy and a fallacy. The whole concept again of uniting us. Yes, we have common experiences, common enemies, etc. But the reality has shown that we generally don't naturally have this thing of relating directly to, let's say, Black Americans, those in the Caribbean, even us that are born here and our parents are from the Caribbean. You know, for a lot of us that go back there, once you can be there for a little while, and if you try to live there, etc., any dispute, a lot of it comes out of, well, you're English, and that's the reason for your difference, rather than them knowing that they have a difference with people, a same difference with people that are born in the Caribbean and live there. This becomes an issue and a problem. So that the concept of this unity thing is the fantasy and the fallacy that I'm really focusing on. And because the liberation and all the good works you're talking about are based upon this unity thing, then I'm saying that's why you all haven't achieved the lofty goals that you should have achieved, basically.
So I'm about to take from that then that what you're saying is the idea of unity, as far as I'm not particularly married to the phonetics African, more the concept of what that is intended to mean. So, but you're saying that the concept itself is a non-starter.
I'm saying the concept, because not just the label, it's not just like the word black, for instance, refers to a color, right? And it's a metaphor for, you can say race in that sense. Because Africa or African centers us around a continent, it makes the mind think that there is some unity of the continent in and of itself, which is another fantasy, which is another illusion and delusion. So, it's just a delusion and illusion upon, it's just a Wakanda concept, which has nothing except a comic book type of idea. And I'm not saying, obviously, the movement hasn't produced a lot of things. I'm just saying, well, it produced a lot at the time, and then it started to slow down. I mean, I'm going to give it, as further on, I'm going to give examples.
But what I'm getting from you then is, so then basically what you're saying is that there is no basis, for Black people worldwide to pursue an idea of unity upon a foundation of unity. There's no actual basis for this. We shouldn't do it. So we shouldn't try to unite Black people in the UK with Black people in America, the Caribbean, and the continent of Africa in particular, or wherever we are in the world. We shouldn't do that.
Okay. All right, let me just say what I'm saying, because I hear your question now. Basically, I'm saying because it is African centered, you would say African spirituality, it centers on what's there and what's supposed to be traditional, like the Ifa, voodoo, etc., being predominant and more dominant over a lot of things. So some people even promote Kemet. What I'm saying is that the unification that we might all have should be based upon what we have wherever we go, and that would be being Black. So this is where I suggest that people like Elijah Muhammad, who was thoroughly aware of Marcus Garvey's Pan-African ideas, he realized this will not work. Hence why he said the Black man is the original man. This type of concept is something we can relate to wherever we are, because his book was The Message to the Black Man in America, because he realized you had to focus where you are with the situation you're in with that particular culture. You lot and the fantasy of this big African it's too much work. You've got so many obstacles that you can't achieve. So I'm saying if we just build up where we are, as I said, you know, yesterday in a conversation, I think it was Scattered Minds thing, or the day before, which was that, you know, each community sees themselves as a nation, and you build up from there. And I'm saying this whole, you know, this thing about being African unity, it's a non-starter already with everything that it with. Yeah.
So you're saying black unity is preferable to African unity?
Yes, but with a better understanding of what that means. So, for instance, what comes along with Pan-Africanism or the African unity is the concept of what it means to be African. Sorry?
That's time, you know.
That's 5 minutes. All right,
It's
cool.
5 minutes.
We can get to some of that later on still. So I'm ready to be.
Yeah. Also, what I'm saying, I don't know how rigid the man them want to be with the timer, you know, car. I don't want to just interrupt the conversation when you're midway through or you're just about to round up or something.
No, let me finish this point. Let me finish this point.
Yeah, no, what I'm saying, this where I say, I think, you know, let's do it a 5 minute roundabout. Okay. And if Shaka, in other words, if Shaka has another 2 minutes necessary, you know what I mean? I don't mind.
I'll do. I'll let you know when the timer's up, and then man them know that's your final point, innit? Cool. Let's finish off that point, and then we go into the next part. Yeah. So right now it's
Let me finish this point.
Oh yeah. Finish your point, and then
no, I think that was it. My point was the people that are closer to people like Marcus Garvey, right? They themselves, for instance, the Black Panther Party, why did they create this thing? Because they knew that the concept wouldn't work. The people that were there, even, I can't remember is it Elijah something? Sorry for my Hebrew brothers, I can't remember his name. There was a Hebrew elder that was back then. Again, these people that would live. Sorry?
So Abba Ben-Ami?
I don't think it was him, but even thank you for mentioning him. There's another one. I think they have a picture with him holding scrolls. That's the.
Oh yes, I know who you're talking about. I'm forgetting the name, but yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Right. Yeah. So what my point is, the people that were close to this thing, they recognized and understood this is not going to work. And I'm saying with all of the writing of books, you know, there's been a good output of intellectuality from the Pan-African community. And even, you know, I'm not going to disrespect the works and the efforts, but I'm saying where we should be by now, we're definitely not there. And I'm saying Elijah Muhammad's Nation of Islam, I say, is the best thing. In fact, I'll say what Malcolm X said, the best movement the black man's ever had, and ends ruined it. Obviously, the Caucasian was very much a part of the ruining of that as well. And we have another brother called Dan Juma that confirms with me and agrees with me that they used Malcolm X as a means to come against the Nation of Islam. I'm not sure if you agree or disagree, but yeah, that's my answer. So, fire it at you.
Yeah, the brother that you're referring to is Wentworth Matthews.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
okay.
it.
All right, so we saying you're ready now, yeah, Shaka.
Yeah, for the cross-examination. Yeah.
Okay.
All
right, cool.
Unfortunately, you went really fast, and that's why, like, I was trying to make notes and stuff. That's why I said you could take more time.
Okay, you wanted to slow down for that reason.
So let me put what I managed to note down.
You ready? Main points. Let me know when you're ready. I'll start the timing.
Yeah, start. Sorry.
Yeah?
Start.
All right, cool. Rolling.
Okay. So Shakara, would you say, as well as the lofty goals, which are brilliant and it's worked very well in regards to the removal of the colonial shackles, etc., is the whole idea is unity and then liberation, right? You know, or based upon, you know, it's just common. I would say it's common sense, but let me get you to confirm that with unity in these goals and these agendas, we will get our main aim of liberation from these devils, correct?
No.
Okay.
So unity is a prerequisite. Obviously, you have to have a unified force that is properly organized for a particular goal. But it's unity. It's united under particular principles. Yeah. So the principles under which we are unified are just as important as the fact that we are unified. Because you can be unified in oppression. You could be unified in subjugation to your slave master. You know what I'm saying? So it's not just unity.
No.
Yeah.
All right, let me put it. Unified, yeah. So what I'm saying is in relation to that, I don't forget to state that, but okay. Unified with the common specific goals, agendas, and principles.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So because nowadays, more so than the past, I mean, it was happening in the past. You had from the Nation of Islam, Malcolm X made his movement, Wallace D. Muhammad made his movement. I think Dr. York, it seems, evolved his movement from that. You had Clarence X and the 5 Percenters. Now we've got internet. That's it, bro. We've just got, we can have anything now. So I'm saying, how is this concept, which, you know, it cannot help but be centered around Africa, African culture, and even, you know, promoting African spirituality, Kemet, etc. How is that going to be the way forward when even the term itself is problematic? Do you see what I'm saying? So, all right, if we want to put comparison to Elijah Muhammad's Nation of Islam in that sense, and the identity of being the original man. So wherever you are, if you want to live in America, you're the black man, you're the original man, you should do this. If you want to live in Britain, you should do this. Wherever you are, get on with it. But the concept of being an African is problematic because already in someone's mind, for instance, if they go to Africa, how do they know they can do anything over there? Do you get what I'm saying? You know where you are. If you're in England, wherever you are, you're used to dealing with the daily problems. You know what the system has to offer. If you're in America or certain parts of America, you know the pros and cons. But the concept of what's going on in Africa, we know through hearsay, media, etc. Do you get what I'm saying? So I just think this concept of, as you say, Pan-Africanism and what comes with that label is just a problem of the movement itself. And I suggest it, I suggest it be either transmutated to something else or be disbanded. I know there's a lot of love for it, but that's emotionalism. I'm saying I'm dealing with practicality.
So there's a couple of things in what you said. Firstly, connection to land is fundamental because there is a direct relationship between autonomy, nationhood, and land. Yeah, and so you can't divorce land from any body's concept of nationhood and their capacity to develop even community. Yeah, beyond this nationhood, but we look at nationhood being the highest expression of human social organization. Even religious people, yeah, have this concept in the sense of the fact that whenever you're talking about constituting or formulating and organizing a religious community on the basis of nationhood, land, and the ability to communicate and have custodianship over land comes into question. That happens whether you're talking about any of the Abrahamic religions, whether it be concepts of Israel, whether it be concepts of Jerusalem, whether it be concepts of Mecca, whether it be concepts of Medina, whether it be concepts of Ethiopia, yeah, and that factors into all cultures, in fact, yeah. So we can't divorce land from the question because land is fundamental, and also because when you're looking at Pan-Africanism, you're talking about the idea of colonialism and neocolonialism. Land is central to those questions and those issues. That's the first thing. The second thing is when you're talking about a dichotomy between land and.
Can I just come in there?
Well,
because you made a few points and I really want to address those. Or do you need to go ahead?
No, you made a
closing point.
To address those. Okay. So, yeah, but it's
you need to cut me when I'm talking. And we deal with them one at a time rather than.
Yeah, right. 5 minutes is up, so closing points in it.
Now forget that. Let's just go as we flow. We're
just flowing now, yeah.
Cool. Yeah. All right. So the first thing is when you're talking about the second thing, this dichotomy between the attachment to the landmass and then the people. Pan-African movements have existed all around the world, yeah. In one form or another, at the very least, yeah. Since the 1700s, and I say at the very least, yeah, in their organized form, yeah. And I'm saying at the very least because we could significantly be talking about before that, but let's talk about post enslavement period, yeah. And there's never been a dichotomy between working and organizing where we are and focusing and having a trajectory that focuses on the continent of Africa, yeah. I mean, I could go from throughout the 1800s and deal with people like Martin Delaney, who were organizers among African people in America, but also organized with African people on the continent. Edward Wilmot Bladden did the same. Bishop Henry McNeill Turner, who was a Christian, minister who organized black people in America, and also traveled to the continent and was organizing there too. Yeah. The greatest example of this would be Marcus Mosiah Garvey, who organized black people around the world wherever they were, and with a focus towards the African continent. So the issue is not, there is no issue, yeah, in Pan-Africanism in relation to black people organizing and working where they are. Never been a problem. It's never been a dichotomy. You know what I'm saying? If your ultimate goal is nationhood, yes, and a power base, then the overall focus, the central focus of all of that energy is going to be the establishment of that power base and that nationhood as connected to land. Yeah. And that is not strange for any people. All people that are powerful in this world today have a global network of people that identify with a shared identity that is connected to a central power base, which is connected to land. I won't go through all the names. Y'all can use your imagination and do that. But to develop on that point even further, there is a book called Pan-Africanism and African Nationalism. And in the forward, this is a book that compiles papers from a Pan-African conference in the 1990s, and I'm forgetting the year, so forgive me. But in the paper, he makes this point. I made the point that we have got to be wary about what I call, quote unquote, continentalism. Yeah, that is the argument that Pan-Africanism means, still for us today, the unity of the African continent in the first place, a unity of post-colonial states, and not, as I would say and insist, the unity of peoples whose history and culture derive from the African continent and are conscious of this affinity and wish to develop these roots as a basis for social and economic emancipation of African people. My definition fundamentally recognizes the link with the diaspora, this is Africans outside of the continent, as more important than the notion of continental unity per se, which is essentially geographical. In other words, the unity of the greater part of this continent logically would emerge more as a consequence than a cause. Again, in other words, if people of African history and descent unite, that is if the African nation unites, most of the continent of Africa will unite. And I'll leave that there for now.
Okay, I gotta say, Leon, yeah, bring back the 5-minute thinker, my brother. Sometimes, let me start with. I think the first.
See now, I'm gonna run it back now. Still, I'm just gonna give you reminders when it's been 5 minutes. Cause just to order a question, then you get me. But yeah, I'm gonna run it back from now. Still,
right,
going now.
It's more of counterpoint still. What I was gonna say in relation to what you said about land.
Yes.
That's acknowledged that we need land, but again, the issue is those people in those countries, a lot of them seem to be having problems amongst themselves. So obviously, I'm not saying Somalia is an issue, but obviously that's there in Africa, and there seems to be some unity amongst certain black people here with our Somalian brothers and sisters. If we look at Nigeria, obviously there's a lot of issues there. Mali is apparently having problems with this Sunni Caliphate garbage. And this generally seems to be the case with the people that are there. So I'm saying in relation to, and I want you to focus on what I'm specifically fundamentally pointing to, is that when anyone needs to unify on a particular goal to be achieved, there has to be a clear concept that it can be achieved. And it seems the more forward we've gone on from at least Elijah Muhammad, Malcolm X's time, Black Panther time, the less it would seem that this can be achieved. Because if we turn up, let's say, for instance, Ghana says, you know what, here's some land. Nigeria says, here's some land for all you lot that want to come back. We form our community, we start interacting, and generally we're going to have our differences already. Just like they have their differences, just like we have our differences here, just like we have differences in the Caribbean. And this is the start to a problem that's already there. We're going to have religious differences.
Do you know what I mean? They've already got their problems. And I'm saying it seems we're not focusing on building firm basis based upon what we call ourselves and our agendas here. That's the problem I see with what you're saying. When you're saying land, yes, we are already on a land. We're in England. Those in America are already on a land called America. Those people in the Caribbean already on a land, right? So I'm saying wherever you are, deal with it. Deal with that being the case, because we may say, okay, over here we're fighting against racism and so on. How the hell do you know we won't move over there, and within 20, 30, 50 years, the government turn worse than these bloody neo-Nazis over here, or the flipping women named Trump and the rest of these others? How do you know? Because they're the majority in the country, and there may be issues that come up, and then like what's going on in South Africa with certain people. These are potential things that can happen. And I'm saying I've never seen anyone have as much gusto and much motivation and determination to achieve some real lofty major goals that aren't even that clearly that can be seen very clearly achievable. And I suggest that's the problem with the term and the general ideas that you lot espouse. And that would be where it's outdated, in the sense that it's not taking into account the real world that we live in. And, at some point, we're going to get into how Pan-Africanism has failed fundamentally when it comes to identifying something which is incorporated as one of its things called Sunniism. So one of the things I want to ask, obviously, maybe that's for Tahaka, which is Sunniism or Islam as a whole compatible with Pan-Africanism? So again, in relation to your statement about land, yes, we already live on land. We've, if our parents came over, we're born here, right? Yes, we're having problems. They're marching up and down Europe talking about they want out Muslims, they want to ban Islam, but we know that's also code word for everyone else who's not white. You get what I'm saying? So really, how will it be different if we go there and they vote in some other government that wants to get rid of us, or some militia group wants to get rid of us, and there's more problems again? Or Saudi Arabia give Boko Haram or Mali Khalifa more weapons and money and convince these Sunni pagans to come and do us harm when we're over there. Because according to them, Pan-Africanists, you should be practicing your spiritualist traditions. These are the things it seems you Pan-Africanists are not taking into consideration. Because when them crazy Sunnis start to get into power, bruv, you know what I mean? You can't, your juju, it didn't work before when it comes to them, conquering and stuff. And I can't see it working anytime soon. So yeah, bruv, I think definitely you've helped me prove that Pan-Africanism is definitely outdated. It needs to be transmutated, and I suggest Elijah Muhammad's Nation Islam be the model upon which we develop a new identity of Pan-Blackism or Pan-something, whatever it is. Obviously, I'll be presenting the Islam of the Quran, which in due course will come.
That's 5 minutes. Yeah, the timer went for 5 minutes as well. Yeah, for too long. Give me 1 sec, man. Let me try to see where I'm going. This happened to me before, you know. I might have to just reset my Streamlabs thing. COINTEL Pro, fam. I'm gonna try to shut down the Black Power, you know, see? PAN-AFRIKANISM. I look like it's back on still. I can hear myself on that. Nah, that's just me though, man. They can't hear you. I bet you talk. To me before, you know. I might have to just reset my Streamlabs thing. COINTEL Pro, fam. I'm gonna try to shut down the Black Power, you know, see? PAN-AFRIKANISM. I look like it's back on still. I can hear myself on that. Nah, that's just me though, man. They can't hear you. I bet you talk. Before, you know. I might have to just reset my Streamlabs thing. COINTEL Pro, fam. I'm gonna try to shut down the Black Power. Are we back? I think we're back. Come like you only can hear me, man.
Go on.
Yeah, bless.
Yeah, we're good. Yeah, let me start by the timer still. Yeah, come in then, man. Them. I don't know if you can remember where you're caught up from still.
Yeah, I remember.
Let me start by the timer still. Rolling.
Yeah. All right. So what was I saying? Yeah. So basically, yeah, the Marcus Garvey, Elijah Muhammad built some great things, yeah, where he was in the United States of America. As did Marcus Mosiah Garvey, as did the Rastafari movement, yeah, with Pinnacle, 500 acres of land upon which they built a self-sufficient community in the 1930s. They were Africa focused, but they built where they were. Malcolm X was in the process of building where he was. So he traveled to Africa, stayed there for a good 18 weeks approximately, and came back to the United States of America to forward a program, yeah, working with brothers and sisters throughout the Americas, yeah. That's a Pan-African principle right there. There's no dichotomy between connection to Africa and working where we are. Both of those things are supposed to take place. And in fact, one is supposed to aid the other. The Pan-African Congress movement, which is an organization over here, yeah, started in the 1970s, worked where it was and connected with the Pan-African Congress of Azania, connected with Julius Nyerere in Tanzania at the time. Yeah, there was no, and the Pan-African organizations over here. So, for example, Kwame Ture, Pan-Africanist, traveled around the world ministering and delivering about Pan-Africanism, and Pan-Africanist organizations over here, for example, the All African People's Revolutionary Party, of which he was a member, was building and organizing over here. And one of the secrets of the Black community in this country is the extent to which Pan-African organization was central to the uprisings that we had in the 1980s, 1981, 1980 through to 1985, yeah? So there is no dichotomy between us working where we are and us looking towards the continent. The essential component is the fact that when we come into identity, one of the programs in the evolution of Pan-Africanism as an ideology is the rejection of colonial identity. the rejection of constructs that are built by colonizers, such as borders on the continent, such as colonial constructs in the Caribbean, such as their attempt to assimilate us into their identity, American, British, for the purpose of building up America and Britain, as opposed to a self-reliant agenda for ourselves and our own nationhood based upon our own culture. And that is an essential component. So no, you'll be correct that Pan-Africanists traditionally are not inspired to adopt the identities like British or American, and are also inspired to move beyond the identities like Jamaican, Bayesian, Nigerian, Congolese, South African, towards a unified identity that speaks to a more organic expression of who we are, because all of these constructs are colonial.
Yes, brilliant. Unfortunately, the main identity of that you're using, which is African, is the biggest colonial identity we can have. And that's exactly the problem I'm stating, where under that concept, we fall into this false idea that there is a unified Africa. Just the very nature of that identity makes you assume that, or that it's somehow one economically or through government. You know, if you say, somebody says I'm Ghanaian or Sierra Leone or Ivory Coast, there is something that unifies that landmass in regards to maybe a political leader, etc. When it comes to the term African, that just doesn't exist, and it's become worse and worse over time. In relation to what you said in regards to Elijah Muhammad, that he has done nothing more further or something than Pan-Africanists, or hasn't achieved as much. The bit again I focus on is Elijah Muhammad came with those words, that the black man is God and the original man, and the white man is the devil. These words shot us forward over 100 years in our movements in regards to where we stand, because somehow Marcus Garvey's teachings assist black people in properly understanding who they were, wherever they were, nor understanding their opponent in relation to themselves. So when you're, you can be a Christian and be a Pan-Africanist, and you can still have the teachings of turn the other cheek as a Pan-Africanist. And that doesn't make sense. You can be a Sunni and be a Pan-Africanist. And the Sunni wants to stop, when he gets into power, the African spiritualists from practicing African spirituality. So this doesn't make any damn sense. You've got all these people with different ideas and concepts who, once they get into power, they're really going to start, fighting against each other, etc. Yes, I agree. You can have meetings and you can agree, hey, let's not talk about it. Let's not debate it. That's fine. But when it really comes to it, when you really start to get power, this is when what you really think and feel will come out. And then again, I say Elijah Muhammad understood what he was facing. He understood what Marcus Garvey was proposing, and he left it behind. He used what was best and took it and rolled with it. I hear Malcolm X is quoted quite a bit by yourself and a lot of Pan-Africanists. The problem we have with our brother Malcolm X, despite he is under my banner of Islam and Muslim, is that Malcolm X didn't fully understand Sunniism at all for him to have made this idea of, being a Pan-Africanist and a Sunni. I'm not saying Sunnis have not, people that identify as Sunnis have not been strong Pan-Africanists or helped forward the agenda. But I think we need to really look at what we're dealing with in today's time. I think you didn't deal with what I presented to you in the past, certain points, but for sure, what we do have is that we are going forward in time. We're not going back. All the borders and boundaries that we have, they have governments. The people in these countries have adapted to those identities. So a Nigerian, I have not seen many Nigerians or Ghanaians or Sierra Leone come up with a new identity other than those. So they proudly say, I'm Nigerian. They proudly say, I'm Ghanaian. They proudly say, I'm Somali, but then they say that's an ancient term, whichever it is. And they recognize those borders for the most part. So they already have this thing and they're working with it.
and then you want to say, well, let's have a bigger goal to remove all these boundaries. I'm just saying, it's with the way that the world is right now, with people wanting to attack and annihilate the black race totally and utterly, this kind of thing is just a fantasy in the sky, with just like the pie of the Christians, and a feel-good ideology, which on one side, just like the Christians can do work with the people on drugs and people that don't have food and are homeless, the Christians do good works, but they still have the pie in the sky fantasy story or fantasy belief, which prevents them from being thoroughly and fully and holistically active, which is what you would generally get from the true Islam. But as Elijah Muhammad has covered all of that, yeah, I still say that unfortunately, yes, it's definitely outdated, and I thank you for providing more evidence to prove that point.
All right. So in relation to your last statement, yeah, I'm pretty aware that whatever happens in the debate, you're gonna say that you proved that Pan-Africanism is outdated. Yeah, this is whatever happens, that's what you're gonna say. At the same time, it's necessary though, bro, that if you're gonna make statements, you have to provide evidence. So to say that Elijah Muhammad moved beyond what Marcus Garvey was dealing with because he wouldn't work, he took the best and he left what wasn't going to work, then you have to provide evidence of that. What exactly did he take? And what exactly did he take? What exactly did he leave behind? If you're going to make statements like Pan-Africanism presumes that Africa is unified, then you're going to have to provide evidence of that. Where is that in Pan-African thought or practice? Yeah, because I would argue the opposite. The idea of Pan-Africanism is responding to the fact that Africa and African people are indeed not unified, right? You know what I'm saying? That we are a divided people. Yeah, the best you can get, and I will provide the evidence for some of what you're saying, is that in the development of Pan-Africanism, the ideal and the idea of cultural unity developed. Yes, that is to say that across the variety of cultures on the continent of Africa, there exists a thread which is defined, and the term was coined by Sheikh Anta Diop in the book, The Cultural Unity of Black Africa, that there is cultural unity based upon certain common themes that you'll find, principles and values that you'll find across the length and breadth of the indigenous cultures, where they are on the continent and where we traveled with them wherever we were in the world. So that concept does exist within the realms of Pan-Africanism. That is a fact, yes. But the idea, for example, that there is that there ever was a one state across the African continent is not an idea that is put forward by African people that ever existed in history. Yeah, that's not the case. The best you'll get out of that, for example, is Kwame Ture saying that that we had prior to colonialism, yes, pre-colonial Africa was on a trajectory of moving from smaller group aggregates to larger group aggregates. You get
brother, shall I stop you there, because you've gone on a long talk in relation to what I didn't say. So I'm thinking if I just tell you what I've said, then maybe you can respond to that.
Go ahead, bro. I want to come back to the Muhammad point.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying, if you're saying I said, then please ask, is that correct? Is that what you said and what you meant? And then please go. So what I said was in relation to the mind, and I specifically pointed how we have something in the mind that allows us to have motivation towards achieving goals. And I'm saying just the term Pan-African, for those who haven't experienced or gone to various parts of Africa and traveled and experienced, this term alone makes you think, I'm talking psychology now, makes you think that there is some unity within this Africa, because everything that's to be achieved, when you say the word Africa, you think of it being something quite simple. But when you start looking at it, it's the most complex thing you could ever think in your life. If you said Pan-Ghanaism, if you said Pan-Senegalism, something like this, which is a small amount to chew, right, or to deal with, you can study Senegal. You can look at the government, the people, the language, and you can relate to, right, we're going to focus on going there. As soon as you say Pan-Africanism, there's something that unites it in your head in relation to all of these different countries. And then it just breaks down as to something you can't achieve. And that's what I'm talking about, the psychological construct.
All right, cool.
Of
But again, bro, you're making a statement that you need to provide evidence for. If it is indeed the case that the term Pan-Africanism gives people a false idea of a presently existing unity, yes, then you need to provide evidence of that. I'm going to challenge it by saying that doesn't even make sense based upon the fact that that Pan-Africanism presents us with the challenge of unifying African people. So the idea that Africa, it can already be unified if we are trying to unite African people doesn't make any sense. One of the first things that you learn about Pan-Africanism as an ideology is that one of its goals is to unify African people around the world, which means that by virtue of us trying to achieve that goal, the goal has not yet been achieved. But it's also the fact that in linguistically speaking, Pan-Africanism is not the only terminology that contains the prefix pan. There are other people in the world that have a pan. So there's Pan-Arabism, there's Pan-Islamism, there's Pan-Europeanism. There's various different pans. Yeah, there's a pan movement of the indigenous peoples of the Americas. None of these pans presume a pre-existing unity. They don't do that. The goal is to push towards the unification of those people in all of those different instances. So just by the examples of the different pans that exist throughout human history, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. At the same time, bro, if we're gonna say, yeah, that is the case, Pan-Africanism gives that impression. When we're talking about Elijah Muhammad and what he put forward, and what you referenced was the term "I am the original man." Yes, does that term present the illusion that there is some organic or pre-existing or present-day unity between all of the original men on the planet Earth? If it is the case that Pan-Africanism is flawed because people on the continent are not united, is the original black man, and remember, sorry, first of all, Elijah Muhammad called it the Asiatic black man. Yeah, again, tying it to land, yeah, but let's come back to that at a later point. But because the black man in America, yeah, has issues, and they have Bloods and Crips and various different gangs, that the idea of unity among the black man in America is not valid because of the existence of gangs on the streets in black communities. Is that the case? Or is it the case that the idea of the unity of the black man in America is proposed as a solution to the issue of gang violence on the streets of America? Is it the case that looking at Senegal is more realistic than looking at the Africa in general and African people in general, when Senegal is a colonial construct, borders drawn by colonizers, which is a plan, colonizers in the 1800s and cemented by neo-colonizers in the 1960s for the purpose of isolating states so that they would not be economically viable enough to become self-sufficient. And then Pan-Africanism comes and says, well, actually, these are colonial states. Let us not respect these borders. Let us reconstitute our land masses under designations that we decide that are economically beneficial to us. So we're not respecting, we're not respecter of the borders of Senegal, because if we're gonna do that, yeah, then what's next to Senegal, and what's on what's above Senegal and behind Senegal? Because you have Sierra Leone, and you have Liberia and Gambia and Guinea and Guinea-Bissau and Mali, yeah, and these nations, these places, parts of these places were in pre-colonial times part of one nation. If we're dealing with Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, yeah, this is all part of one nation, and the various different groups, yeah, existed under the auspices of that one nation pre-European colonization. So why should we focus on Senegal and not the ancient empire as it stood in previous times of Mali or Songhai or Ghana? And in relation to that, why can't we actually just discard that altogether and reconstitute something new that is more beneficial to us? Because we know that the resources in Senegal, the resources in Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, Guinea, Mali, yeah, Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire, if they were coming under economic and political unity, would be able to constitute a more viable, self-sufficient economic nation than just the nation of Senegal by itself.
Okay. Yes. Well, I mean, unfortunately, as we can clearly see, that there is a lot of misunderstandings of what's said, even in relation to what I said about the conceptualization of what this does when you say the word African to people that are not aware, who haven't traveled there. So maybe you don't understand what that means when it's said, because it's presented as a whole.
Maybe you have to provide evidence, bro, because I've been a Pan-Africanist all my life, and what you're identifying
exactly
doesn't make any sense to me. So I've never seen
you're
it.
familiar with it. That's what. All right. For instance, if somebody says Europe, right? We live in Europe. We've got an idea of Europeans that come here. We've got an idea of how Europeans are. And they have a lot of things in common that relate them, not just complexion. For those of us that live over here and hear about Africa, so you've been a Pan-Africanist, you are not the example I'm talking about. And that's my whole bleeding point, is that it becomes a fantasy story for other people. That's why I said the youth here that grow up, this idea is so far away from their mind, so it becomes a fantasy.
There's a fundamental flaw in your argument. Yeah, you can't define the validity of an ideology based upon those who misunderstand it. That doesn't make any sense. For if you're saying I'm not the example because I stand on the trueness of what it is, and these people are going to misunderstand, all that the best you can get out of that is that Pan-Africanists have not been as effective in terms of communicating the goals or the ideology of Pan-Africanism. And I might sympathize with you on that point. It doesn't mean that the concept in and of itself is flawed, or the concept in and of itself promotes the idea. No, the concept of Pan-Africanism simply promotes the idea that Black people should be unified. Not that we are, that we should unify for the purpose of solving these problems.
I'm saying already.
But the fact that we are not unified is the very reason why Pan-Africanism promotes the idea that we should be unified.
No, I know, and this is what I keep saying to you. And I didn't say the people being unified. I said Africa, meaning, and I gave the example of governments, where when you say Senegal or Nigeria, there's a concept of there's one ruler, there's a government that rules it, there's laws, there's something that's
who believes that? Where does this exist? Who is it that believes that Africa today has one ruler under a unified government? Where does that exist?
Can you give me what you're listening to? I'm saying all right, shall I say subconscious mind? Because I keep saying the mind, and then you say, where does it exist?
Where is the evidence though, bro? Where is the evidence of the fact that the term Pan-Africanism presents people with the illusion that Africa currently exists under one government?
Bruv, that there is, bruv, I gave an example. I want you to listen to the words I actually say, because I'm saying how the mind works, right? So, all right, I'll tell you what we'll do.
But in relation, evidence, bro. You're making a statement.
No, I heard you. So therefore, hold on. So therefore, what would you need me to do? To go directly,
bro? However, you're making a statement, yeah. So by
making a statement, so I need to go into psychology.
But the
to show you how it works, yes.
That's fine. But the burden of evidence is on you. So if you can show me a psychological link between Pan-Africanism and illusions that you're presenting, I may be inclined to engage your argument. Until that point, it's pure speculation. The fact of the matter is that you can see. Hold on a second. The fact of the matter is that we can see evidence, clear evidence of Pan-Africanist movements and organizations, and how they have acted. So, if we can go around the world and see how people have behaved in relation to this concept, and the push from people engaging in Pan-African work, is to unify Black people and to shed and to challenge certain artificially created divisions as it relates to Black people. So you keep mentioning nation states like Senegal and Nigeria and these kinds of things. But this is the point though, bro, because Pan-Africanism flags up the fact that these are neo-colonial constructs. These are not constructs developed by African people in the interest of African people. The idea that Africans in the Caribbean are not African and are Jamaican or subjects of the British states or the Spanish states, are colonial constructs imposed upon African people in the Americas by colonizers. And those Africans said, well, actually, no, we're not subjects of Britain. We are African people, and now we're going to work towards reconstituting and developing an African sense of self and an African political and economic order.
Okay. Let me just give an example of the unfortunate state that the Pan-African mind is in. You gave an example of Pan-Arab and Pan-European. The thing which these Pan-Arabs predominantly have in common is their religion. which goes all the way and pervades the whole of their culture. But not just that, it's their language. And they've had this unifying language for a hell of a long time.
Beautiful point.
So I'm saying to you, we haven't even got that far yet to have a unifying language or a unifying religion.
It's a beautiful point.
Sorry?
It's a beautiful point. But go ahead. What about the European?
Yeah. But this is my point. I'm saying when you're doing these comparisons, you're failing to understand that I'm talking about the steps we're taking are not the small baby steps that we need to, so to speak, or we've got this massive meal that you're putting to someone to eat.
No. Again, that's a misunderstanding.
Hold on, no. Bruv, listen to what I'm saying. I'm talking about the mindset. You will have to agree with me, Shakara, that the majority of youth today, because this is what I'm talking about. We're going forward now, right? We're trying to at least get the youth to understand that this is the objective that we collectively have. And I'm saying their concept of Africa, when you say it like that, when they're not, not people that really have traveled there and so on, I'm not saying that they're going to think, oh, these are all unified governments. I'm saying in the mind, it gives that conception because you're talking about it as if this is one thing already. When you say Pan-Africanism,
no, that's Pan-Africanism is a goal. Yeah. So the idea is that we're looking to achieve a goal. Yeah. Now, the idea that the community, that people have the wrong idea of what it means is one thing. It doesn't make the goal invalid or outdated. And it doesn't make the principles or the work to achieve the goal invalid or outdated. There are many things that I might agree on in terms of how Pan-Africans communicate and whether we've communicated effectively over the years. There have been times where we've communicated.
But that's the reason why you haven't, because you're still stuck with this idea.
But if you're going to put forward Elijah Muhammad and the original black man concept and the black man being God as a concept, because that concept in and of itself, hasn't stopped the formation or relinquished or moved the goalpost any further in terms of these separate distinct nations on the continent or throughout or even the United States of America. So if we're going to use the current manifestations of unity of black people as a barometer by which to test the mettle of a political.
That's what I put down, brother.
No, but you're saying that that Elijah Muhammad's model and his framework,
so his principle,
of identity for black people was more effective than the Pan-African.
All right, let me give you an example to correct you.
But you're gonna have to demonstrate that, because I'm saying that even in relation to black people in America are not unified under the
hold on, brother.
How are we gonna measure that?
Okay. A lot of the time when you say stuff, it's like, you sort of go left or right of what I've actually said. So let me.
I'm a comprehensive thinker. I'm not a linear thinker. So I do.
No, I'm both. That's what I'm saying. We get into the detail and the expanse, and one of the things, unfortunately, I've found is Pan-Africanists seem not to get into the detail.
Oh, but the fact is, you can't say that when you're not providing any details.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna give it now. Hold on. So when you said the Asiatic black man, he wasn't talking about what we call Asia today. And he clearly outlined this. He brought something new to them. It relates to where they... Hold on. Let me give you a demonstration of how Elijah Muhammad directly related to the people he was dealing with. Elijah Muhammad gave the people an image in relation to them believing in a white Jesus. So he said, this man, Farad Muhammad, is Allah come in person, who becomes the ultimate authority that they're supposed to follow, because they're so used to seeing a white image of their God. And then Elijah Muhammad said, well, he's a light-skinned black Arab or whatever it is, a mixed race. And he come in this complexion so that he could move within the people and do his work. So they could relate. So it's not a big jump from a white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed devil pecker with Jesus to a Muslim where Allah has come in the person. So this isn't a big jump for their minds. But what he's done there is underneath that, saying that you're the Asiatic black man, but he called the whole earth Asia, right? So it's a new term. He called the whole earth Asia, and you're the original man of the earth. You didn't come in opposition to, you're here as a curse. So he's looked at what they believe, what they have in their minds, and he's tackled them and dealt with them all at point. Pan-Africanists are dealing with so many different points all the time, and they're all over the place. I'm just saying,
Yeah, but again, bro, you're making a claim. You have to demonstrate that now. So provide the evidence of what you're talking about, because
I'm gonna give,
hold on. But this is the point, though. You can't take from one element of the supreme lessons, yeah, right? The supreme lessons as presented by Elijah Muhammad, and compare that one aspect of the supreme wisdom to the entirety of Pan-African ideology, and then say Elijah Muhammad was specific and Pan-Africans are dealing with everything. What if I told you that the first images that Black people in the Americas saw of Black divinity were painted and distributed by the most honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey and the UNIA ACL?
I'd have no problem with that, but Marcus Garvey's movement was dropped by loads of people. So
was the Nation of Islam.
What's the difference?
What's your point? This is the point I'm trying to make. You're making statements, right, without evidence, and you're saying that basically because people dropped the UNIA ACL, that is evidence of its invalidity. The same for the Nation of Islam. Yeah. So the point is, right, if you're gonna put forward,
is this a joke? Like, is Farrakhan still around or what?
Yeah. So is the UNIA.
Like, he's the successor to Elijah Muhammad.
So is the UNIA.
Hold on.
So is the UNIA ACL.
Where is this
So is the UNIA ACL.
Where is this movement?
And so is the Pan-African movement. Okay, yeah. Good question. So the Pan-African movement is manifested today in various different forms. One of them is the economic freedom fighters in South Africa today. One of them is the movement of Brother Kemi Seba, who is organizing who's developing a mass movement across French-speaking West Africa in order to rid French-speaking West Africa of French neocolonialism, more specifically in relation to the CFA franc, and he's widely popular in that regard. There is a Pan-African movement developing among many universities, across the continent and in the Caribbean, for that matter, where university professors are doing some good work. I'll name Brother PLO Lumumba as an example. I'd name Sister Kabu Ma'at Keru in Jamaica as an example. You know what I'm saying? So there are Pan-African movements all throughout the world, my brother. So the ideology of Pan-Africanism is certainly not sleeping. It's certainly in existence in today's in this day and age, and it's no less visible than the Nation of Islam as a movement.
Right. I mean, obviously we got the Million Man March. I mean, you say what you will, bro. At the end of the day, I don't need to.
America, I've given you examples internationally of the existence of Pan-African movements and organizations.
Yes, bro. I hear you, and when I say it's out there, I mean, I think you keep missing out my points. I'm saying to you, for instance, the Nation of Islam's basic objective was what? The message to the Black man in America. Okay.
The basic objective,
saying when you have such an objective that you're talking about,
it was separation from the American government, and they were campaigning for the president to grant them land. I believe it was 5 states in the southern part of America for the purpose of building their own nation. The goal of the Nation of Islam was to build a nation. But their target
the stated goal. The stated
goal. Yes, but that's what they said, bro. It's a part of the supreme wisdom and their goals.
Prof,
yes,
no, Prof. What I'm saying to you is the stated goal. What that means is
part of their stated program. Yeah, what the Muslims want.
I know this.
Read what the Muslims want, and they will tell. And it's in there. Land. One of the.
This is basic.
Say again,
Prof. That's basic information. What I'm saying to you is, in relation to such a goal, I'm saying the example is that wherever we are, we try to obtain certain goals where we are, because this whole thing, like I said, when going to Africa, most Black people are afraid of going to Africa, even for a holiday, to see what it's like because of their perception of Africa. Again, now, Pan-Africanists in all this time has not been...
And now, enough people are going to Africa. That wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for the fact that Pan-Africanists have done the work to change perceptions of Africa. But bro, have you missed the point where I talked about the fact that there is no dichotomy between working where we are and directing our energies towards a central focus point?
No. Bro,
Why
I
don't
keep...
you point then? Unless you're providing evidence of the fact that Pan-Africanists don't work where we are and only waiting to or focusing on going to Africa, I'm not sure what point you're making here. But the fact of the matter
is your point we will be working to go back to Africa in the end? Is that not your point?
From the principles that I read earlier, it is mind, body, and spirit. When you look at the words of Omowale Malcolm X, for example, he said that he believes a physical he believes in a physical repatriation to Africa, but not necessarily at this point, and not necessarily for all people. This is a stated goal from a long time. Nobody has said.
I'm talking about you.
But my personal goal. No.
I'm saying Pan-Africanists.
Yeah,
so
then you can't. If you're asking about Pan-Africanists, I'm going to give you the
It's varied. You're saying it's varied. Some say
yes.
yes.
I'm not saying it's varied. I'm saying that it is not the goal. It's never been a Pan-African goal for all black people to go back to Africa at the same time and just move there and live there. That's a fallacy that is projected onto the movement by outsiders and often critics of the movement. The operations of Pan-Africanist movements and organizations have always been from the inception of the term Pan-Africanism and even prior to, when there is what you call proto-Pan-Africanism, to work where you are for the purpose of directing those energies towards the continent and a global unity of African people. Yeah. Now, if you want, I can read you the stated aims of the nation of Islam in relation to what.
Hold on, wait. What you just said there didn't contradict the idea when you're saying you can work from where you are. I was talking about the general goal, and I think I've heard this several times from Pan-Africanism.
General goal is nationhood.
Hold on, wait. No, let me finish my point, because this is what happens. You keep cutting me, then you don't get the point. What I'm saying to you is, in relation to what you just said, that you can work from where you are, that's fine. I'm not talking about it. I was talking about the general perspective, which I've heard from several Pan-Africanists. So I wanted to confirm with you that at the end goal is for us all to basically unify, to build up our homeland, and then to go back home, so to speak. Now, that's fine. If you're not proponing that in debate, then let's just leave that. As long as you're not putting that forward.
No, bro. We have to clarify this. It is a principle of Pan-Africanism that all African people must be Africa focused. It is a general principle of Pan-Africanism that we must have a connection to the motherland. We must travel there. We must know it. Yes, and these kinds of things. It is not a principle of Pan-Africanism that must be the primary goal right now, or that everybody must move there at any point in time. There's nothing in Pan-African doctrine that states that all African people must live on the continent now or at any point in the future. That's not the case.
Right. All right, hold on. No, I'm talking about, so let me get this correct. You're saying that if there's people in America,
yes,
okay,
yes,
they must try and unify with other people,
yes,
who are on the continent and elsewhere,
yes,
when their main aim is to live generations 300 years in the future where they are. How is it they've got the problems there and they're not going to focus on what they're doing there?
The idea is that a power base, that is connected to land, has the ability to protect its people around the globe.
They have land already. This is what, bro.
No, but that's the point, bro.
Point.
They don't have land, bro. You can name me a piece of land, yes, that is governed by African people in the interest of African people. Where does it exist? It doesn't
exist in Africa either. So what's the difference there?
Exactly, that's the point. So that is the reason why Pan-Africanism exists. I said it right at the very beginning.
Brother, you're not listening. So I'm saying, what's the difference between, there are American people who say they're from America. They were there before people came there and invaded. So they're saying they want to liberate their land or have a piece of land there. So why are they going to be part of this movement?
Bro, at the moment, we're not discussing the validity of their movement. You're challenging me on the validity of Pan-Africanism in relation to this principle. And I am saying to you that the idea, first and foremost, from the macro idea, because we haven't dealt with the different steps and these kinds of things, but the macro, and this is no different. If you're going to put forward Elijah Muhammad, Yeah, Elijah Muhammad, what the Muslims want. Point number 4, we want our people in America whose parents or grandparents were descendants from slaves to be allowed to establish a separate state or territory of their own, either on this continent or elsewhere. We believe that our former slave masters are obliged to provide such land and that the area must be fertile and minerally rich. We believe that our former slave masters are obliged to maintain and supply our needs in this separate territory for the next 20 to 25 years until we are able to produce and supply our own needs. Since we cannot get along with them in peace and equality, after giving them 400 years of our sweat and blood and receiving in return some of the worst treatment human beings have ever experienced, we believe our contributions to this land and the suffering forced upon us by white America justifies our demand for complete separation in a state or territory of our own. And then when you go into that a bit more, the Nation of Islam identified, I can't remember the number of states, but there were some states, yeah, in the southern part of the United States of America that they were centralizing this demand around. Yeah, that's a very specific goal. Now the difference is the Pan-Africanists not necessarily, whereas Pan-Africanists did similar things in terms of campaigning and petitioning for the return of African land, yeah, from the colonizers and at various different points in history, yeah, and then an evolution of that evolves whereby armed resistance comes into play, whereby we want to actually now take back the land. Then more evolutions come in terms of the political side, in terms of political ideology and social organization for the purpose of commandeering power in various different aspects of human activity, whether it be labor, whether it be law, whether it be economics, whether it be sex, whether it be war, yeah, and whether it be education and all of these things, yeah. So that's what Pan-Africanists are dealing with essentially at the end of the day, yeah. But if you're going to talk about unrealistic, and you're going to give Elijah Muhammad as a more practical or effective goal, then you have to measure that somehow. So the measurement would be how much closer are the black people in America to achieving this goal than the Pan-Africanists are to achieving the goals of Pan-Africanism. Can you measure that in terms of stating that Elijah Muhammad was more effective?
Yeah. So the whole point was in relation. So you could say if they didn't bring along Malcolm X and the Sunni Saudi devil religion, obviously Elijah Muhammad's movement would have got a lot further. But obviously we could say that about
you're saying Malcolm X.
Jeez, I'm ready.
Name, bro.
So we could say the same obviously about Marcus Garvey said so. So go on. I'm saying what was that you were saying?
Are you saying that because Elijah Muhammad would have been successful if it wasn't for Malcolm X? Is that the claim that you just made?
I'm saying the devils used Malcolm X's situation, and in line obviously with, which I think you agree, the Saudi version of Islam, to bring that in as a major opposition. So I've been saying this for like 10 years, that they use Malcolm X as an opposition to Nation of Islam.
How are you able to factor in the work of the devil in relation to thwarting? And I'm totally
no, I said the same about Pan-African. I just said that. That's what I'm saying. I confirmed that.
Because the assassination of Malcolm X was a fundamental and direct attack against the development of the Pan-African movement.
Well, you can say that if you wish, and I'm saying that's like two birds with one stone. Hold on. What I'm saying is I have no problem with that being the case, because obviously Malcolm was making bigger moves in relation to the UN, etc. So I'm saying that for them was two birds with one stone. Number one, blaming wait. Blaming the Nation of Islam. Obviously, they first said it wasn't them, but they made people believe it was the Nation of Islam. So obviously people therefore would hate them, but also attack against what Malcolm X wanted to achieve in relation to the Pan-African or Black nationalist movement. I have no problem with that, bro. But my whole point is in regards to this thing being outdated in relation to what it proposes. And I started with the idea and the identity of this thing. You're thoroughly, I mean, this is pretty good that we've got this far and we thrashed out so many points.
But
and
bro,
I think,
if you're
hold on. What we need to do for a next one, because this is almost like brainstorming, the amount of different points we've thrown out here. I'm suggesting we definitely get on with the part 2 at some point, and we come with more specific points, because I think we've evolved so many different points here. That's what I suggest. You know what I mean? So I don't know if you want to round up. COE, Leon, you there?
There's something that needs to be said here on the issue.
Yeah, man's air still.
I dealt with
Yeah.
the identity thing already, right? And the idea, as far as African is concerned, is to use the biggest social aggregate as an umbrella. Yes, and that umbrella is African. You can be Igbo and be African. You can be Zulu and be African. You can be Bakongo and be African. You can be Somali and be African. You can be Kikuyu and be African. You can be Ashanti and be African. And the idea is not to do away, or subdue any of these identities. The only identities that are worthy of being challenged as regards to Pan-Africanism are colonial identities, those who are that are designated by the colonizers. And so the whole point when it comes to identity, where the term African is concerned, not the phonetics now, but the concept behind it. Again, if you're going to challenge that, then one, you have to challenge the idea of critical mass in terms of largest social aggregation. And the second thing that you have to challenge is Sheikh Anta Diop's idea of cultural unity. Because if one is saying that there is valid reason for promoting and projecting the idea of cultural unity, and this relates to language, this relates to culture, this relates to spiritual practices. So
when did he write that book?
And when did he write the book? I believe it was in the 60s. I could be, exactly. My dates could be wrong.
That's my point.
But how is that? But that doesn't even make sense, bro. Because you're promoting true Islam coming from a book that was put together over 1,000 years ago.
Exactly. No, and I can hold on. I can demonstrate how that works all the time.
So can I. So if there was if cultural unity of Black Africa could have been established in 1960, how is it any less true? The history that he's referring to doesn't cease to exist because it's 40, 50, 60 years later. That doesn't even make any sense.
No. I tell you, this is what I'm saying. You seem to forget what's being said before. What I'm saying is, whatever he was writing on then was based upon the politics of the time. So if he lived now, hold on, let me finish. If he lived now as a realistic person, you can see from Sheikh Anta Diop's writings, he's working with a certain vision of potentialities of the future. No way could he have seen the internet. No way could he have seen all of these different things that we've got today. Do you get what I'm saying? So it's very, and this is the point where I'm kind of glad we got to this point.
Is a reason why Pan-Africanism if we are properly organized, is actually more possible, today than it was in 1960. Why? Because Africans have more mediums to communicate and to share information and to build organization today than we did in the 1960s. But the point is, the concept of the cultural unity of Black Africa, is it a valid concept or not?
Hell no, it is. Right? All right, let's deal with that. Let's deal with that right now. A cultural unity. Tell me the elements of a culture that you're thinking a culture constituents contains.
The elements of a culture. Well, first of all, we have to define what is culture.
There you go. You know what? Let's leave this to the next one.
Because hold on. Man can do this very quickly. Right. What is culture?
But my response is this is what I'm saying. Let's leave this specific point, because I think this is one of the major things of everything you're saying.
Bearing in mind, that you're coming from the perspective, or put it this way: if it is possible for any single religion to unite various cultures on the planet, then it is possible for African people to unite our cultures into a unified expression of culture.
Well, let's see. This is the point. So I guess where we can go from here is we're talking about your Pan-African unity and culture and these various things as you propose, because that generally, if you look at it, that is really the only place where you're going to find your goals, your lofty goals achieved. So therefore, I guess we can come with Islam.
But you're talking about outdated though, and I want to say though, because the question that you asked was, is Pan-Africanism outdated? And what you haven't interrogated in this conversation are a proper examination of the problems, yes, that Pan-Africanism has come to solve, yes, the methodologies that it was using for solving them. So I've named them: colonialism, imperialism, neo-colonialism, and all the things that relate to those things. Yes, and I put forward methodologies and principles that Pan-Africanism has proposed over the years in terms of challenging and solving these problems. Yes, I outlined all of them. And so the idea that if we are still facing colonialism, imperialism, and neo-colonialism, that the ideas as it relates to Pan-Africanism of things like self-governance, of things like economic self-reliance, of things like self-defense, yeah, of things like land acquisition, yeah, how can these principles be outdated if how can land acquisition by African people be outdated if Africans continue to be dispossessed of our land? How can self-reliance by African people be outdated if continue to be dispossessed of our land and resource? How can being proud of our heritage as African people be outdated if African people continue to be ashamed of our heritage? This is the question that we have to ask in assessing whether Pan-Africanism is outdated or not. One could say, because unrealistic is not the same thing as outdated. Yeah, and we can interrogate the unrealistic thing if we want. Yeah, that's fine. We can interrogate the unrealistic thing if we really want to. We can go there. But the question that we are answering today is Pan-Africanism outdated? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the systems of oppression persist. Then the ideology of liberation cannot be outdated. That's my argument.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. So the problem you're having is, although I recognize all of these problems and the claims that Pan-Africanism has plans to solve them, my whole point of it being outdated is, or saying it's outdated, is because I fundamentally recognize these to be the problem or problems, and I fundamentally recognize that you lot claim you have the things and the ways and means of solving them. My whole point is that was when the world in the 1920s, the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and maybe 80s or even 90s. And I'm saying that's where you lot end. Similarly, I would say Elijah Muhammad's Nation of Islam probably would have got to the 80s and then that's it. But all of your ideologies, the internet has put them in the dark ages. Do you get what I'm saying? And that's my whole point.
You're making a statement. Now you have to demonstrate now.
Oh, brother, I know. No, brother, I didn't interrupt you. I wanted to interrupt you. Come on now. Hold on. This is what I'm saying to you. This here, remember, it's the first debate in a series. So we've gone through a whole heap of points and we can now narrow them down to these specific things where you're going to say, boom, you gave an example of colonialism, etc., etc. You don't need to be a Pan-Africanist to say, right, you lot have, made these borders which we don't recognize. You've given us labels which we don't recognize. You don't need to be a Pan-Africanist to do that, bro. So, these things that you're presenting, they're not exclusive to Pan-Africanism. These are things which normal people can just have.
No, but Pan-Africanism is the ideology and the framework that has developed the ideas of decolonization. So if to make that claim, bro, you're gonna have to show me now a comparable ideology that has formulated program, philosophy, and practice to achieve those same goals and been even half as near effective. That's what you're gonna have to do.
Boy. You know what I'm
saying, man, them seem like you're wrapping up the thing for now, but there's comments. I mean, there's questions from people in the comment section. You get me? So I don't know if man want to do that.
I'm good to
hold on. I just wanted to say, well, it may be then that we've actually reached a point where it's going to be Islam in general. So the basics, not even the Islam of the Quran, but even the basics of Islam versus Pan-Africanism. So we can really get down to the nitty-gritty and demonstrate how this thing is outdated, and even proving the point. Wait, hold on, let me finish. What do you, Nick? Even proving the point where a 1,400-year-old book, an ideology, demonstrates throughout that it is the supreme ideology of wisdom as inherited from all our greats across the landmass called Africa. So we're going to see some of the supreme science, inshallah, over the Pan-Africanist failed ideology and movement. Thank you.
Yeah. So what's the man I'm saying? You want to take some questions from the audience?
That's cool. I'm good for that.
I think we should give it. Should we sum up right now?
Okay.
If he
Want to do a
sums up and then
summary?
I sum up.
Yeah. That's a good idea. Still.
He did that though. He said if he sums up, then I sum up.
I like so I can trump man in it. So I can trump all the man's points.
It's a
What you
good
saying?
strategy.
No.
What
Mine's
you
already
saying?
set.
How long?
It's a good.
How long for the summing up?
No, I'm good. I'm good. All I would say, I mean, I can do it in a couple minutes, yeah. Because we're gonna answer questions. All I would say is that in order to demonstrate outdatedness, a man has to qualify his statements with evidence in terms of principles, practice, ideology, movement in Pan-Africanism that has no longer relevance in today's world for whatever reason. But I will say that at the end, we've got to the crux of why this debate is even taking place in the first place. There are many people who feel that in order to validate what they're dealing with, they have to destroy Pan-Africanism. They somehow see that Pan-Africanism stands in the way of whatever it is they're dealing with. And one of the things that happens is the whole ideology of the continent of Africa and Israel, Arabia, Israel, and them kind of things there comes in because those who have religious perspectives that are reliant upon allegiance or focus on these areas of the world want to validate this in relation to Africanness. Because you notice they never go to Iran or Turkey with this ideology. They're not talking about them places there, you know what I'm saying, which is beyond Saudi Arabia. They're just focusing on Saudi Arabia, Mecca, Jerusalem, Israel, and these things. They never speak about the north, which is like Spain, and Portugal and Greece, and these things just over the Mediterranean in terms of validating it within the concept of what is African or not. No, because their focus is on their religious tradition. Yeah, so they challenge what African people consider to be African based upon their allegiance to lands that are important to their religious tradition. I don't want to take that away from them. Yeah, if these lands are important to your religious tradition, fine. You don't have to come and invalidate Pan-Africanism in order to hold on to the significance of those lands to you and your religious tradition. But we're here now, so let's go forward.
Okay. So obviously nobody heard me in any way, shape, or form promote Saudi Arabia or anything. You've always heard me refer to the Holy Land as so-called Africa. So that fallacy there is thrown straight in the garbage. My whole point with Pan-Africanism is that it's failed. In other words, my observation of it over years from since I've ever heard of it is that it hasn't worked. Hence why I promote, or I've said Elijah Muhammad and these various other things, even the Moors, Noble Drew Ali, etc., Dr. York. I'm just talking about what will work. I'm dealing with the real world and things that are going to be successful. So as a person who studies so many different ideologies, communism, the whole lot, all kind of politics, modern day politics, historical politics, modern day religions, ancient religions that have been extinct, all kind of different things. And I'm saying what I'm observing from this thing is I want stuff that will work, that will achieve our lofty goals or our small aims and goals. And I'm saying this thing here is just a big blasted heavyweight ball on our ankles that in the way it is at the very least today is not going to work for the speed at which our enemies and opponents are coming at us. Hella no, we ain't got time with the Pan-African drag your feet feel good business. You get me? It's similar to Christianity, unfortunately, with singing about Jesus coming through the clouds. Even retarded and wretched, stinking, dirty Sunniism can produce a hell of a lot more, even when they're unified. You know what I mean? At least, they can produce more. So I'm saying that, unfortunately, as much as I love the idea of Pan-Africanism, the only reason I'm speaking about it in this way is not because I'm a Muslim. It's because I have this Black Tellect awakened and activated, wherewith I'm saying it's not going to work in relation to the problems we're having and the enemies that we're facing. It's as simple as that. So as I've demonstrated very clearly, this ideology has been failing to work in relation to the opponents and so on and what they're doing, as we can clearly see. People of knowledge, have decided to bypass it, like Elijah Muhammad, Noble Drew, the Black Panther Party, and use things that are more realistic, etc., and achieve their goals. At the very least, we can have small-term goals and then see where we are after we've achieved those. In other words, have these long-term goals, but those as provisions of maybe if we achieve the smaller goals. But for sure, we always need to focus on where we are, because we can never have as much information as necessary of what's going on in Africa. So for instance, if we plan to move to a country in Africa, Senegal or not, and then this government over here, the Western governments are going to take precautions about that. We always know whatever move we make on the chessboard, this monkey over here, these devils are going to be considering what other moves we're going to make. And it seems the Pan-African, is not taking these things into account. So, you know, unless of course, you know, there's something wrong with the juju or the African spirituality, there's problems there. So yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to have to present a bit of the Islam of the Quran to demonstrate the supreme wisdom that we, the original Muslims, the original man, are coming with. So stay tuned, people, for, you know, and stay alert for the bell and whatever else is, the notifications, that hell, you're going to see some of that supreme wisdom come out, and you're going to really see that when so the Black Tellect has been talking, yeah. We're going to come with that. Thank you very much.
All right then. You know, it's serious when he turns into the American still. What I'm saying now, yeah. And people them want to ask questions now. You know what I'm saying? I'm tagging content over everything, so it comes up nice and orange for me. You get me, so I can identify it easy. But from the top of my head, I did see one saying, I think it was directed to you, Shakara. But both of them and them can answer, but I think it was directed to you still. Is are you willing to work with other pan movements, for example, Pan-Europeanism or something like that, in order to, do you think that's going to be beneficial or going to have any effect on you realizing your goal on as a Pan-African?
Pan-Europeanism could only be a viable working with relationship based upon mutual equal power and shared interest. Generally speaking, the interests of Pan-Europeanism have been antithetical to Pan-African sensibilities, because Pan-Europeanism has been a historical and contemporary colonizer of African people. So it would be a fundamental flaw. Europe united for the sake of colonizing Africa. So the idea is that Africans must unite for the purpose of throwing off the shackles of European colonization. From the Pan-African perspective, particularly the nationalist Pan-African perspective, is that developing a strong enough power base would mean that we deal with people on our own terms and not as exploited people. We wouldn't seek an ally in Europe necessarily. Strategic relationships of trade may or may not exist depending on their viability. But no, there is no working with Europe on certain levels for the foreseeable future until Europe ceases its intent of being a colonizer and a neo-colonizer of Africa and African people.
So have you considered what your relationship would be with the rest of the world outside of Africa, if everything was in order how you wanted it to be on the continent?
There are various viewpoints of that within Pan-Africanism on that subject. Some are dead on the idea that we need an international ally. Some say that we are less in need of an international ally if we are properly organized. There's currently a debate around our position in relation to China, and whether we are indeed organized enough as a people around the world to negotiate with China to our own benefit, or whether we are too weak, and so therefore are subject to the will and whim of China. There is also Russia, and there have been debates for a long time in terms of Russia, because Russia has been a power and certain strategic relationships have existed. And
Sorry, somebody said they can't hear anything. Can you lot hear us? Somebody said in there they can't hear anything.
It's only one guy who's saying that still.
Can you hear us?
I continue.
One sec. It might be the same thing
He
where it's
said the
just me
audio.
talking.
He said the audio's gone. Let me play mine and see what happened here. Yeah, hold on. Are you talking?
I think it's just the one brother still who's having a problem. People, let me know if you can hear or if I think it's just the one guy still.
Yeah. So the point is that Russia, because of its anti-West stance, has been considered an ally by some Pan-Africanists. Others say, well, if we're gonna ally with them, it should be a strategic ally relationship based upon interest, but we shouldn't jump in bed with these people as though our goals and their ultimate goals are the same. So the point is that allyship from a Pan-African perspective must be developed based upon interest, shared interests, and strategic alliances rather than moral, everlasting allyship for the foreseeable future.
From pleb enforcement, he asks Shaka whether Pan-Africanism is on the rise or decline and why.
It's an interesting question. That depends on the social indicators. It's a good question because based upon the popularity of some movements, you could actually say it's on the rise. Based upon if we were to look at the state of our people across the globe and the extent to which we are organized in general, you might say it's on the decline. I'm not entirely sure that a scientific answer to that question can be given in this right now. But what I can say is that if we're looking at the internet, which Brother Issa mentioned earlier, social media, YouTube, and these kinds of things, there's definitely a rise in Pan-African themes and sensibilities among our people, even in our popular culture. The language and of blackness and unity and pride is a Pan-African sensibility. The development of African fashion as a global item, sought after item, is a Pan-African sensibility. Particularly in the West and Britain and them kind of things there, African fashion was made popular by Pan-Africanists, as well as brothers and sisters from the continent who traveled to places like Britain and America, who may not have necessarily been Pan-Africanists, but were interacting with Pan-Africanists. And a lot of those people were actually Pan-Africanists. There's a chapter in the Blueprint for Black Power, written by Amos Wilson, whereby he gives an assessment of the strength of Pan-African movements to be able to influence the tastes of Black people in America, but some of the more obvious cultural, superficially cultural elements, such as the use of African names or the wearing of African garments and them kind of things there, were not sufficiently matched by economic development and these kinds of things. And so he's developing and putting forward strategies for us to create an equilibrium between the superficial outward manifestations of culture and the more fundamental foundational aspects of foundational cultural ascendancy based upon economics and these kinds of things. So yeah, it's a difficult one to answer, but there's definitely good signs. If we look at Dr. Mumbi, if we look at Wode Maya, and all these channels that are popping up whereby Africans are traveling around the African continent and visiting different African nations. If we look at channels like Search for Uhuru, there's definitely an increase in focus on and study and the exploration of Pan-African ideals among our people globally at the moment.
All right. I beg the man and keep them as rapid as man can. Obviously, you want to give a full answer still, but yeah, the questions are coming in rapid still. So, the next one from Lucian Lenovo says, "Can you ask Shaka if he's read the book um, if he's read Back to Black by Ken Hind Andrews,
Yeah,
and if
Andrews, yes,
so,
yes, I've read it.
what's your thoughts on black radicalism?
Yeah, so it's an interesting book, and I'm yet to, I need to read it again, because when I read it the first time, I intended to make an assessment of it. Um, I'm to me, I have no issue with black radicalism, and I appreciate his push, because one thing I can say is that the debate about Pan-Africanism takes place even within Pan-African circles, because some people say that the term has been so co-opted that we need to discard it for the purpose of using another terminology that builds upon the ideals that we're talking about. So it's really a change of of um it's a superficial change rather than a substantial change. But because, like, if we use the term like black here in this country, black has been so co-opted because that it can mean anybody, any ethnic minority. Some people say we shouldn't use the term black. Similar thing. All right. So I take a lot of his arguments. I believe that some of his arguments are flawed. Some of his arguments in terms of his critiques of certain aspects of Pan-Africanism are correct, and totally, absolutely correct. I would affirm them. I would say that he doesn't necessarily balance them in terms of how other people within the framework of Pan-Africanism have sought to evolve certain things and philosophies and ideologies in terms of what he would call black radicalism. So yeah, I would consider what he's talking about in the book as in terms of envisioning a black nation that is no respecter of borders in the world. That is actually a Pan-African ideal. Yeah, so that's not an argument against Pan-Africanism. He's asking for just a reformation of how it's presented in that particular instance. You know what I'm saying? It's a good read. I've got a lot of critiques of the book, as he has critiques of the movement, and it's a brother that I know. So I've spoken to him, and we are actually supposed to be arranging some kind of conversation around it, and he's open to that conversation. I've just been very busy and haven't been able to organize it. So I look forward to seeing you there when it takes place.
All right then, don't know fam, I'm there fam. Next one from M.A. Brown. He says I've got a question for both. Once you've both excavated Pan-Africanism and Islamic whatever, do you expect to see any remnants of Pan-African methods in Issa's thing?
Go on. I've answered a few, so I'll ask East to go.
No, you go ahead first, please, bro.
So do I read the question again?
He says, once you've both excavated Pan-Africanism and Islamic whatever, I think he's talking about the debate, what man's going to do in it. He says, do you expect to see any remnants of Pan-Africanism, Pan-African methods in Issa's thing?
Yeah, so definitely. There's no way I'd argue that Issa in putting forward true Islam, and I'm going to say specifically in relation to black people and African people, because we are identifying with Pan-Africanism that we have specific issues that need to be addressed. There's no way that true Islam is going to address those issues without taking into consideration certain of the principles of Pan-Africanism.
Oh, I don't know. I didn't expect that response from Shaka, because I didn't understand the question to be that way. But let me read it again. So he says, I have a question for both. Once you have both excavated Pan-Africanism and Islamic whatever, do you expect to see any remnants of Pan-African methods in Issa's thing? 100%. I mean, all what is positive and realistically achievable would definitely be applied. But obviously, you can see that, even with the deviant ideology of Sunni pagan Kufrism, they get things done. They get things successfully done. Look how the Sunni pagan coons that work for their massa, look how quick they get stuff done for massa. Look how we've allowed them. If you go to New York, how we over there, the Sunni, black Sunnis made it so easy for Palestinians and other Arabs to come in and build up their shops and their masjid. They're sorting out everything for them, apart from ourselves. So obviously, once we turn that energy towards ourselves and doing for self, bang, it would just be there, bro. That's all it is. I mean, even with Sunni pagan garbage, you can produce that. So imagine the supreme wisdom of the Quran, bro. You know what I mean? So yeah, bro. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's just sort of common sense. What shall I say? If you think of it like this, it would be haram, therefore forbidden, for us to maintain the label of the devil slave master, that, you know, the conqueror, when they came and conquered us. So one of the things of these borders and boundaries, stuff like that would be removed. The what's the word, valuing of our currency and what our natural resources are worth. You know, they're giving us trinkets for our own thing. Again, that's haram. All of their system, all of what they brought to us, you get me, to take advantage of us, all of that's haram in Islam. So it's pretty straightforward. Yeah, you're going to see, or put it this way, all the Pan-African methods that are good, positive, productive, they're already there in the supreme wisdom of the Quran. Thank you.
All right. Next one from Pleb Enforcement. It asks if there's any prominent self-proclaimed Pan-Africans he disagrees with. Does he know? My bad. There was something before that he wrote still. I think my screen scrolled down too much, man. He says, ask Shakara, who does Shakara think is the most prominent Pan-African leader currently living and impacting culture in the way he wants?
It may have been Mugabe at one point, and I have criticism of Mugabe, but he was definitely forwarding a Pan-African ideology in the latter part of his life. Right now, it would have been actually, I'd say up until April of 2017, the preeminent Pan-Africanist we would know would have been Queen Mama Namzamo Winnie Mandela. I'd argue. But there are many other names. There's Baba Chinwezu, yeah, key scholar. There's Mama Marimba Ani, who's still living.
Do you want to explain in particular what it is that they've managed to realize, what is like in line with what you're trying to do as a Pan-African?
I'd say Mugabe essentially, first and foremost, on the principle of land reacquisition and the idea that African people should take back our land from colonizers and neo-colonizers. He also had a vision that went beyond Zimbabwe as an individual nation. Queen Mama Winnie Mandela, the same, had a worldwide Pan-African vision, but also was a radical and revolutionary vision. So this went beyond what was in her nation in terms of this fallacy of rainbow nation and one South Africa. She went beyond that towards a more Pan-African vision. Mama Marimba Ani is philosophical in the sense of the fact that she challenges the entire education system of the Academy of Eurocentric Education and seeks to develop African-centered methodologies and modalities for us to break down social phenomena. She's also an institution builder. She runs schools and after school institutions and these kinds of things. I'd say Julius Malema is another, who's like one of the most prominent in this day and age, from the perspective of being directly involved in politics and organizing a political movement from the grassroots that is having impact in the nation of South Africa. Kemi Seba, who I mentioned earlier, who is at the helm of an organization called Urgence Pan-Africaniste, that is developing a very strong grassroots movement, primarily across the French-speaking African world. And when I say that, I mean in Africa and the Caribbean. This man is, when he goes to different nations, thousands come to see him. So yeah, these are among the more prominent. There are others like PLO Lumumba, Dr. Mumbi, who's working principally in media, in terms of developing Pan-African perspectives of news, distribution services, and these kinds of things. So these are some of the more prominent ones.
All right then. Next one from Now or Never. Ask Shaka, will Pan-Africanism hinder more modern, successful, decentralized Black liberation movements?
He'd have to give me an example of what he's referring to.
But he's a Hebrew, you know, so it
Yeah,
might be.
but again, what would make the Hebrew more successful than the Pan-Africanist? If I just use
He said, will Pan-Africanism hinder it? More
yeah,
successful,
but I'm saying,
decentralized Black liberation.
in
Yeah,
order
go
for
on.
me to know what he's talking about, I'd have to be knowing what he's referring to. I'd imagine no, um, because what is good for Black people is good for Black people. I disagree fundamentally with a lot of the Hebrew doctrine, but I applaud any efforts among African people to, for example, address the drug issue or the gang issue in our community. The fact that you may be a Hebrew and you may bring people into the Black Hebrew fold does not lead me to reject or deny the fact that it is good that we are no longer where Black people are no longer on drugs or shooting each other. That is a good thing. You know what I'm saying? So if there is an African-centered educational institution, which there are many, Pan-African schools, Saturday schools, and full-time schools in the UK and the USA, I would not regard that to be a hindrance to the Black Hebrew movement, unless the Black Hebrew movement considers itself in competition with Pan-African organizations.
One from Remo. He says, for Shaka, does he think Afro-Asiatic speaking people hinder Pan-African unity, considering the fact that Arabs belong to the group?
This is a good question. Yes and no. It's not necessarily Afro-Arab speaking people. I believe that the concept of Afro-Arab as an anthropological concept, as related to religious ideology, often leads people to define identity via outsiders from of indigenous nations on the continent, rather than connection to other indigenous nations on the continent. And so if a person's relationship to the Arab world or the Jewish world becomes the definitive defining factor in their identity, then yes, that presents a problem for African unity. And this is the reason why proud heritage is a fundamental component of Pan-Africanism, because it suggests that primacy should be on our relationships to each other as African people. It also, if we look into the work of people like Theophile Benga and Jean-Claude Mboli, even challenges the designation of Afro-Arab, yeah, and whether it is actually a realistic historical designation or a colonial one. So that's important as well.
It is one that I missed still that I started to read earlier from Pleb Enforcement. It says, asks if there are any current prominent self-proclaimed Pan-Africans he disagrees with. Does he know Ghazi Kodzo? I think his name is. Does he know who that is?
Kodzo. Yeah, I know Gazi Kodzo. Yeah, so Gazi Kodzo was a member of the Uhuru movement. Shout out to Baba Omali Yeshetela and all the brothers and sisters of the Uhuru movement. A couple of the members over here, Brother Luwezi, Sister Lamumba, Brother Makola, and others. These are brothers and sisters that I know. Gazi left the organization, but we have I, as a Black nationalist Pan-Africanist, have fundamental differences of ideology and practice when it comes with the Uhuru movement, principally because they are socialist and I am not. And in fact, they're an example of an organization that would largely be considered Pan-African or come under the Pan-African umbrella, but they reject the term Pan-Africanist in favor of African internationalism. And these things. So that's one example of what I was referring to earlier. But yes, we have debates. I debate many Pan-Africanist leaders. I have some differences with Julius Malema. I have some differences with even Brother Kemi Seba. Minor differences with Brother Kemi Seba. We generally agree on 99.9% of things of things that we've engaged on or I've engaged him on thus far. But even the ancient great ones, I have fundamental areas of divergence from the Osage for Kwame Nkrumah and others. You know what I'm saying? So yeah.
From DC, Brad 925. Ask Shakara, is North Africans part of Pan-Africanism?
The Africans in North Africa are Pan-Africanism.
Nothing.
Yeah, you know?
What qualifies as African in North Africa?
We're referring to the indigenous peoples of North Africa.
Elaborate, man. We don't know who they is.
The those who
Is it a brown paper bag test?
not necessarily, no. And I'm saying it this way because I understand that it's a complex issue. You have basically majority people who are majority children of invaders, those who are generationally mixed, and those who are have a greater retention of indigenous African ancestry. There are questions around this that even I myself have, which I won't go into here and now, except to say that the principle is that an invader who continues to wield unearned power and dominance over African people and presides over systems of discrimination in relation to African people is a contradiction that must be resolved. And there is no negotiation on that particular principle.
Boy, it looks like man's caught up, still, sir.
Sorry, what was that?
About the North Arrows, if man consider them, the question was
Hello?
Yo, can you hear me? You can't hear
Did
me?
you call me? Sorry. Did you call me?
No. Hey, so are you talking to the online people, or are you talking to someone else?
No, I'm talking to you because I wanted to answer D. Brad's question.
Okay, go to your answer.
All right. He says our Shakara is North Africans part of Pan-Africanism. One of the issues again that I suggest we're having is this same damn thing where, the label belongs to these people. So fundamentally, of course they are. Do you know what I mean? Because they were part of the movement before. People aligned, native or whatever you want to call them, indigenous Africans align themselves to these people. They will be aligned in regards to religion, as they are, they align themselves in enslaving our black people in Mauritania and elsewhere. So this is the problem with these labels, because it doesn't allow you to have a clear vision and goal.
Apply what you just said to South Africa.
To what? Sorry?
South Africa.
Apply what I just said to South Africa in what way?
So the South Africans, so the white people in South Africa, have been called South African. Some of them have been called African even. And the land is theirs. So apply your analysis just now in relation to North Africa to South Africa.
Well, this is the problem. You never listen to all. Hold on. You never listen to all the elements. I put in there the most fundamental. Hold on. The most fundamental thing that I put in there was not just the label African. It was their culture and religion, and that's what I'm saying to you. This trumps every damn thing, and we're going to get into that later.
What is their culture and religion, though?
Who?
The people that you're talking about. Why?
Of Algeria and all of that.
But bro, I haven't made a statement. I've asked you a question, so I'm saying to you, apply what you're saying to South Africa. So
it doesn't apply. That's why I wouldn't apply it.
Why doesn't it apply?
Because those people there are not Muslims.
Yes.
And
what's your point?
Hold on. And they've only been there 300-400 years.
What's your point?
And they come there with their own language, Afrikaans or whatever. These lot are speaking.
They didn't come there with Afrikaans. They developed Afrikaans while they were there.
Right, but no, all right. They're speaking a language that they've got there. It's recognized they've only been there no more than 500 years.
Many of them are saying that they're African and that the land is theirs. Yeah, they've been there for generations. yeah,
Yes.
and all of these things. So yeah, you can't just say it doesn't apply. You have to demonstrate how it doesn't apply.
No, bruv, it's I've made it clearly apply to these lot through demonstration. Meaning,
How? What have you demonstrated?
I put it on
Hey yo,
again.
you man are getting back into this debate thing, you know,
Yeah,
because we got questions from the audience, you know.
you're right. You're right. Let me just answer. Anyway, I've answered the question for Brad. There you go, Brad. These North Africans, of course they are. The label comes from people outside. A lot of these particular creatures align themselves with the Europeans, French, and whoever else, and helped enslave us, subdue us, and whatever else. So expect that in the future of
What
these
if I
people.
told you? What if Asa? What if I told you that there are Pan-Africanists that say that we need to use a different term other than African?
No, I know that. I know that fully. I'm fully aware of that, bro.
So the emphasis then is not on the label itself, but on the substance behind it. What is it intended to be?
Not just that. That's what I'm saying. It's interconnected.
Yeah, it may well be, bro. But I'm saying that if there are Pan-Africanists that say that we should move beyond, we have to get to a point where we move beyond the term. We have to find a different term, a term other than African for whatever reason. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's within the ideology of Pan-Africanism, not outside of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right,
No, I agree. Yeah.
Next question is kind of in line still what you man are talking about already still. It says for Shaka, but you both can answer. It says, do you think Afro-Asiatic speaking people hinder Pan-African unity considering they identify more with each other, including Berbers and Arabs?
So this is a fundamental question,
From Remo.
and this is the other thing though, because the in order for Pan-Africanism to be outdated, Brother Isa is in the unfortunate position of having to demonstrate that it cannot evolve or does not evolve, and that's a difficult task for anybody. I don't envy him. But the fact of the matter is that where debates around this have existed, the Black nationalist Pan-Africanist perspective is that we must judge our relationships with people based upon how the conditions of African people wherever we are. Yeah, so we don't go to Russia in allyship when we understand that Russia is mistreating Black African people. And so we understand that culturally and historically, the majority of the population of North Africa identifies as Arab and has an Arabic political and social and economic allegiance. Yes, often to the detriment of Black people, African people, indigenous African people in North Africa, who are considered outside of that fold, even when they are Muslim. So once again, that is a fundamental reality that has to be resolved. So yes, that reality does hinder Pan-Africanism, and therefore needs to be resolved.
You want to touch on that as well, Isa, before I ask the next one? The next one's directed to you still.
What was that question? Sorry, I didn't even catch it. Go on.
It was directed at Shaka still, but I said both of them and could answer. It says, do you think Afro-Asiatic speaking people hinder Pan-African unity considering they identify more with each other, including Berbers and Arabs? You kind of did answer it still already.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I think they're a hindrance, but more a hindrance is us not seeing them for who they really are, and what they're really about. So us not realizing their takia, etc. Yeah. So
can I just add to that though? I'm sorry, Brother Leon. Yeah, that there's another contradiction whereby there are Africans who are blatantly African, who because of religious supremacy and cultural supremacy under the guise of religious supremacy identify as Arab. We have that issue in Sudan, yeah, and that is a fundamental thing that needs to be resolved. But at the same time, we recognize that Africans globally have experienced varying different levels of identity crisis. There was a time, yeah, where many Africans from the Caribbean would outright reject Africanness because we were taught that it was everything to do with wickedness, evil, barbarity, and savagery. And via the success of Pan-African movements, there are more Africans today who are at the very least proud to be African. So we have to respect the fact that if we have that in the Caribbean, then there are also movements on the ground in these places where Black African people are organized along similar agendas. So we have to be sensitive to the specific dynamics that exist in these places as regards to identity, and treat the nuances and the sensitivities with respect also.
All right then. This one's for you, Issa, still from M.A. Brown. He says, if the cultural racism...
No, I was going to read it, but go ahead.
You can read it out, so you can read that if you know what it is already.
So brother M.A. Brown says, if the cultural racism that exists in Sunnism, in brackets, creating hadiths that also promote this, is existent in the culture of the Shiism, how could I trust either? Very simple. There's no promotion of Shiaism for me, of these people. The difference is, and I'll state it again, Sunnism is made up by the people themselves. So you can't get away from it. As soon as, for instance, the Prophet passed away, you had the companions ignoring. There are hadiths literally where Abu Bakr, the first Sunni god, literally ignores a command of the Prophet. And that's what you find all the time going down. With us, fundamental, even to those who you call the Shia, they may not fully follow the method that they're claiming to follow, but I have no reason to follow their culture. We are supposed to use the Quran as the criteria. So therefore, we're not going to, you're not going to find any Iranian culture or any Iranian racism. There's no need for it. But not just that, the Quran itself has references to us as Black people, and our empowerment. So at some point, inshallah, that will be there. Obviously, the Iranians and others haven't promoted that. But again, Issa the Black Tellect is not calling anyone to Iran or any interpretation of anyone who's not Black. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? And even if they were Black, for instance, anyone who's not pro-Black or Black-centered or something like that. So, there's a difference. We are taught to go to the Quran. The Sunni has to go to other than the Quran for him to understand what the Quran is really saying, for him to understand what the Hadith is saying. So he's got the opinion of the opinion of the opinion of the understanding of the opinion all the way back. And that's where Sunnism comes in. So yeah, please stop confusing these two religions as being one or two sects in the same religion. They're not. And I suggest, brother M.A. Brown, if you can put forward some Sunnis, that we can have this discussion so you lot can see clearly that it's two different religions. Because there's no point me talking and giving a lecture on this thing and then talk on my thing and then talk about Sunnism. When the Sunni's going to again talk about what I'm saying, why not just have us both on the panel? Like brave Shaka stood up to the plate, stood up as the brave warrior that he is. You get what I'm saying?
Brave.
So where's all the brave Sunnis? Well, this is the Black Tellect, bruv. Come on, anyone who stepped to me in regards to intellect, they're brave. But what I'm saying to you is that where's all the Sunnis? You lot's friend Issa, where the hell is he? In the comments, arguing debate from the comments. Ziriab came on. What happened to him? He tried to pretend he's not a Sunni. He delayed giving us his true opinion on the companions. We then pressured him, and he, after trying to do his taqiyya, admitted his position. Even he tried to cause a ruckus yesterday in argument in relation to the debate. So, they're all flim-flamming about, and it's showing you the very nature that the Sunnis agree. I'm telling the truth about their dumb religion. So for you lot, please stop confusing the two. Does it make sense that I'm going to present ideas and concepts that are going to be inconsistent with my 100% pro-Blackness? Doesn't make sense at all. Do you get what I'm saying? So, when you're ready, just find me a Sunni that you lot give credence to, and let's just get in this work and annihilate the damn Sunni ideology. I mean, it's simple, brothers. Please do it. Thank you.
Cool. This one's for you, Shaka, from Pleb Enforcement. It says, what will convince Shaka that Pan-African ideology has failed?
A substantive argument. You have to show me the failure of the principles, the values, and the programs. One thing I can say is that when the Pan-Africanism, as it comes to formation in name in 1900, in 1900, has constantly been fighting against a more well-organized and well-resourced opposition, and we have not achieved the goal of being as organized and as well-resourced as the opposition. That is mostly because the principal dynamic in the forwarding of an ideology are people who are adhering to and convicted by the ideology. And the reality is that a substantial amount of our people have seen fit to attack those who come with liberation ideologies, movements, frameworks, rather than to join. I'd argue that the propaganda that Pan-Africanism is unrealistic has been a tool in that damage for a significant period of time. But most people who engage that line of reasoning very rarely engage in a systematic or even surface level analysis of the successes of Pan-African movements. What have Pan-Africanists achieved? Conversations like this, generally speaking, are developed on the fallacy that Pan-Africanist movements have achieved nothing. Yes? And this is a problem because all it demonstrates is that the people them that are making the critique are ill-informed and not qualified to bring the critique. Yeah, they're not qualified to delve into Marcus Mosiah Garvey, Patrice Lumumba, Nkrumah, Winnie Mandela, and examine exactly where they went wrong because they don't know where they went right. Yeah, so that's a fundamental thing. So one day, because I'm a person, you know, I believe in talking about what I'm for. I try to talk about what I'm for much more than I talk about what I'm against. And one of the things that I've implored Pan-Africanists to do more is to speak about the successes of Pan-Africanism, the success stories of Pan-Africanism, in order to combat this avalanche of propaganda that derives from our enemies in programs like COINTELPRO and the attempt to destroy the Pan-African movement.
I respect. We're coming up to half 12 still. Man got corny in the morning.
Oh, you mean 11:30? Sorry, I thought we said 12:30. That boy.
Yeah. My bad. Half 11. I'm coming up to half 11.
Say one more thing though, yeah, on this point, right? On the subject of proud heritage, one of the successes of Pan-Africanism and the Pan-African ideology, the Pan-African ethos, let's say, is the restoration of dignity to our African ancestors. And that is important because of the presupposed supremacy of European civilization and culture, and other civilizations and culture, we were not inspired to a significant degree to look upon our own ancestral lineage with favor, or the possibility that they could provide us with anything. But the good thing about Pan-African ethos is that the idea is not that just that, oh, I'm going to look at my ancestry and I'm going to discover that I'm Yoruba and I'm going to give credit to the Yoruba ancestry or culture, or the idea I'm going to look at my ancestry and see that I'm Zulu and I'm just going to give credence to the Zulu ancestry. The Pan-African ethos has developed an environment whereby Zulu can appreciate the ancestry of the Yoruba, of the Kikuyu, can appreciate the ancestry of the Maasai, can appreciate the ancestry of the Akan, can appreciate the ancestry of the Bakongo, can appreciate the ancestry of the Kemetu. Yeah, that's fundamental, because all civilizations and cultures venerate ancestors. And the issue is that we were taught that our own ancestors were not worthy of veneration. And I'm not even just talking about on the spiritual level now. I'm just talking about in general, the general understanding of what did your ancestors do? You know what I'm saying? What did they contribute to civilization? And so the Pan-African ethos taught us to give a collective validity yeah, to our collective African ancestry, and that is a fundamental achievement.
I respect, brother. Yeah, like I said, well, it's half 11 now still, so probably gonna take a few more questions and then try to wrap up the thing. You get me?
Yes,
I'm
sir.
on one right now from DC Brad again. He says, "Can you ask Shia Tellect where in the Quran?" Yeah, I saw as well. While I was reading this, I saw Isa. I saw you typing calling DC Brad a crooner or something like that. Don't discourage people then from asking critical questions, fam. We want critical questions.
No, it
Don't call
wasn't a
him.
question. He made another comment, so that has nothing to do with the question, bro.
Okay.
He
I
made a
will.
comment above. That wasn't in response to his question at all.
Irrespective, I'll say let the man them talk their thing. As long as they get out their questions, I don't want them to feel like if they ask a question, you might, or if they say something you don't like, you might be all over them. Make me, sir.
No, me and Brad are cool, bro. Me and Brad
No,
know
no,
each
I'm
other
ramping, I'm
from
ramping,
time.
I'm ramping, I'm ramping. Cool. He says, can you ask Shia to like, where in the Quran does it empower Black African people?
Yeah, obviously that will be part of the supreme wisdom of the Quran, or at least some crumbs from that table, which will not be presented at this moment. I will work out what bits I can teach in the next segment of this, and then see. But definitely, I obviously want to give you lot something, some. I've been talking about it for a while. I've been trying to get to a right position to do so, and it's very strange that it's taken a brother who's not a Muslim to be the one to elicit these responses from me, which generally shows you the cowardice and the what's the word, the weak position of the Sunni pagans thinking Kaffirats. I mean, hell, I've been cussing your stupid religion. The Christians do it and you debate them. The Hebrew Israelites do it and you debate them. All these other people do it and you debate them. So the Black Tellect is telling people your religion is garbage, it's kufr, it's from the devil, all of this stuff. And not one stinking Sunni monkey wants to come and defend his dumb religion. Even though I promise to be polite, I will not call your religion nor you any names. You get me? You see how me and brother
It's
here.
pause. Are you just gonna say any dumb stony monkey, and then in the next sentence, I'm not gonna call you any names. I'm gonna be polite. You're throwing
In
them
the,
off, fam. You're throwing them off, blood.
I'm saying in the debate. What I'm saying is they call me careful all the time in the comments. So I'm saying in the
Follow
debate
the
itself.
Quran, though. You're charged with following the Quran, rude boy. I've read a piece of the Quran where it says it explicitly talks against returning
Leon,
ignorant behavior.
would you like to pretend you're going to give me verses from the Quran for me to then bring verses back to you and let you sit
I
down in the
beg
noise?
you, do that. Cause right now I got the impression that the Quran teaches you when someone approaches you in an ignorant fashion, you're supposed to respond to them with words of peace. So unless
Really?
you're gonna bring me something that refutes that, that's because that's my impression what the Quran's teaching me. If it teaches something
Oh,
different, then I beg you let me know.
Okay, hold on. No. It teaches you depending on the context and who it is. So everything has a context. You're
Okay.
thoroughly aware that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, not only recited verses from the Quran regarding, for instance, say to them, the people it was referred to, you are on nothing. So this is people of the book. You're on nothing unless you do certain things. Obviously, it says to the people who have different gods, it says what you worship is only names that you and your forefathers made up. What's more insulting to somebody? Imagine somebody going to people that have Shango and Oloduma and all these other different so-called gods. I'm saying so-called as in, and you're saying these things ain't nothing. They're just names that your ancestors made up. And then you're talking to me about how to be respectful. I agree, brother. And I'm saying to you, it's always contextualized. Likewise, you're thoroughly aware that the Prophet Muhammad and the Muslims took out their swords, their spears, and bow and arrows and defended themselves against enemies. So Isa the Black Tellect is psychologically defending himself against the stinking Kaffirats and all these other coons and tent Negroes that would like to support them and come against the Black Tellect. That is the
I
bottom
suppose
line of Islam. Justice. Simple as that. You don't find me calling people names who don't mess with me. So it's as simple as that, brother.
I suppose I'm gonna have to study the thing in more depth to get a firmer understanding still. Cause obviously it's my first perception. I have to consider what you're telling me and that I haven't read the whole thing. You get me, sir? Yeah. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Let me have a quick scroll through, cause I think that was the last one that I see. You get me? But as I said, right now, man's trying to wrap up the thing. I don't know if anybody else is live at the moment. Yeah, anyone wants to kick off a live, now's the time. You get me? Cause we're gonna wrap up the thing. I don't know if the man want to say any closing statements. What's to come? You get me? How they feel the discussion went / debate. You get me?
Yeah,
They want to
I
address
would
anyone in the comments. Yeah.
say, yeah, I think it went brilliant. My brother, you know, I mean, with it, obviously he had his slides and whatever else, you know, his things to present to hand, which is good. I need to start doing that myself. But yeah, I'll be honest, I held back a bit because I want to save it for a next debate. And I do feel, here's the problem, I do feel bad. I do feel guilty because I do love what the Pan-Africanist brothers are doing. My whole point is not to try and say, don't join it, don't, you know, to shut it down. It's more to do with modification and modify it quick. That's my whole point. So I feel that can only be done if you come at it like this, then maybe, you know, they start to look at certain points, maybe which they didn't think about. And likewise, you know, it's been done to me. And that's why my perspective has evolved to be as solid as it is today. So I think, as they say, steel sharpens steel. So, you know, big up Shaka, the brother that comes as the warrior. You know what I mean? Simple as that, brother. So, yeah, I think it went well still.
Well, give thanks, brother Issa. You know, I'm glad to hear that you feel guilty. You should. You should feel guilty. You know, in fact, you should repent to Allah.
Well,
You should say astaghfirullah at least 10 times when the conversation you know, concludes. For venturing to suggest that the Pan-African movement could ever be outdated. I do look forward to the further conversation that we're going to have on this subject. I didn't hold back. I don't need to. I've got enough to last me for quite some time, so there's no need to hold back really. But I look forward to more substance. Yeah, if today he was holding back, then I suppose the holding back was of the substance. So I look forward to more substance in terms of the proofs, yeah, behind the statements that are being made. I think I certainly will be going forward on the premise of making statements with substance, and that should be how we engage and present to our people. Finally, I do hope somebody learned something from the conversation today, and I hope ones and ones learn something from the conversations in the future. So big up to all brothers and sisters, and strength to all my Pan-Africanists around the world who are keeping the flame alight in the face of the forces of global white supremacy and neocolonialism continuing to attack I and I. We big up, yeah, the people them that do the work, you know what I'm saying, against all the odds. And we know that the victory will be ours. 10 more.
Allahu Akbar.
Yeah. Well, respect for everybody for locking in. Respect for the panel members to jumping on and having the discussion in the first place. Yeah, everybody that enjoyed it, respect. You get me? Anyone who didn't, whatever I done to if I done anything to make you upset or make you feel bad, I want you to know that I'm proud of that. But yeah, also anybody else that wants to have discussions in the future on COE, got a few people that sending emails still. I'm gonna all out the man them and we chop it up, you get me? But yeah. Other than that, we out, man. That's a wrap still. Peace.
All right, peace and love to the people then. Blessings.
Peace.